Progress in resolving the job crisis in Annan created by Young's abandoning their site there is disappointingly slow, and although there have been rumours of intended purchases, nothing so far has been confirmed. Job losses or relocation of work to venues outside our region have also been announced in Langham, Lockerbie, Dumfries and Castle Douglas, and it is clear that our economy is currently very fragile. We will have an opportunity to debate that later during this meeting. On a happier note, a very successful conference was held last week on the Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal, attended by 370 delegates from across the 5 local authority areas. There is still a lot of work to do to shape a bid to secure funding from the UK and Scottish governments, but if successful, this one-off opportunity to reshape and strengthen the economy of the Borderlands area must be taken. On another happy note, we saw the opening of the Kirkcudbright Art Gallery to the public during the last month. If anybody has not been there to see the art gallery, it is a very splendid building and something I think the region has every right to be extremely proud of, and I'm sure that it will be an attraction for visitors as well as for local people. I'm being non-partisan in saying this, but I have been asked to make mention that this year, or the season coming up, is Queen of the South centenary season. A number of colleagues will be enjoying watching the World Cup at the moment, and the Scottish season will kick off fairly soon. Queen of the South was actually founded in 2019, but they are actually using this current season as their centenary season. I'm sure we look forward to the celebrations on that, and I say that, as I say, in a non-partisan way, recognising that obviously that there are supporters of Annan, Stranraer and other football teams on the council. Could I ask Rona for the SEDERUNT and any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Leader. We have apologies from Councillors McKee, Stitt and Surtees, and as we start the meeting, Councillors Scobie, Ingalls, Charteris and Dempster are not present.
Councillor Dempster is having an emergency dental operation, or not operation, dental appointment, but he does intend to be back as soon as that's over.
Ingalls and Charteris said apologies, Leader.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have any declarations of interest from colleagues in the matters that we're discussing today? Okay, John Camp.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, item 5 on the agenda was co-opted onto Laurel Community Council last week.
Thanks. Any similar declarations of interest? Councillor Nicholl.
Yes, Leader. Economic climate report. I have been involved with Curry European and their move, but I don't think I need to leave the room.
No,
okay.
I don't. Thanks. Okay. Thanks very much. Can we move on to the minutes of the meeting of 30th of April, which are for approving? Right. No matters arising. Okay, item 4 is the unaudited accounts for 2017-18 and a report by the Head of Finance and Procurement, and these will be distributed now. We haven't had prior sight of these. They're here. They're large and we see. Okay. This report is presented to comply with the relevant legislation, which requires draft accounts to be published by the Council no later than 30th of June following the relevant financial year end. And as I said, the unaudited accounts as in previous years have been tabled at the meeting, and members should all have a copy. I hope everybody's got a copy of that. The accounts will be scrutinised through the Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee, and they are also available to the public. Paul Garrett is here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. And I appreciate that people have only just had sight of that report. So, anybody, any issues? Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it's with regard to page 90 of the corporate accounts rather than the pension ones, Common Good Funds. At Dumfries Common Good Fund, there was an issue with regard to the balance sheet, whereby there was 22,000 odd missing, I would say. Whether it was just a printing error, I'm not sure, or whether I don't understand the IFRS system of accounting, out of a revenue reserve. Now, within the income expenditure for that year, there was a £7,000 surplus. I would have thought that within the revenue reserves, we would have had an extra 7,000 in there rather than actually losing 22, I think the figure was. Can we take it these accounts are correct on that basis?
Paul, I know that this was a matter for concern at the Nithsdale Area Committee. The accounts that were presented there were rather confusing. Now, obviously, nobody's had the opportunity to read through these to see if and try to reconcile them with what the committee had, but it certainly was a matter of concern.
Thank you. Yep. I haven't had the feedback from the area committee, so I wasn't aware of that issue, but we'll look into that in more detail. I think one thing I would highlight to members today, as you've reflected, is that this is the start of the audit process, so the accounts themselves will be subject to review to assess whether there are any issues that need amended in them. That will be done over the upcoming months, and they'll come back to members at both full council and at the Audit and Risk Management Committee. So if there is any concerns, anything that needs to be adjusted, it will be picked up through that audit process. But we'll look at that specific issue and feedback to the councillor on that.
Well, I'm disappointed to hear that you hadn't had the feedback, because we were assured at the Nithsdale Area Committee that that would be transmitted to the Finance Department. But Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it disappoints me as well, as I've also raised it with 2 corporate directors, and they said they were going to get an answer back to me. I'm still waiting. It's 5 weeks later. The other issue I have on the same issue is, how can we be assured that the auditors actually audit the figures correctly when it was pointed out at that meeting that the figures in the Nithsdale accounts didn't add up for the previous year?
Paul?
We'll take that up with the external auditors. They have been appointed by Audit Scotland. Obviously, they meet the relevant qualifications and requirements. We're anticipating they will do a thorough and comprehensive audit and pick up these issues. But if there's particular things we need to identify and address, we'll take that forward with them and with the members that are raising these queries.
Just for clarity, it was on the balance sheet for 16-17. I think the figures were 2.28 million. They only added up to 2.25 million. Unless, like I say, I don't understand this IFRS, but I would have thought you add up all the assets and you take away the liabilities, and it should add up to the balance figure at the bottom, which it didn't.
It's probably difficult for Paul to comment on that without having the documentation there, but there is definitely an issue around that, and it did result in the Nithsdale Area Committee making an award, but on the basis that we were actually able to make the award, and it wasn't clear that we were from the information we'd been given, so it would be helpful to have that clarified in advance of the next Nithsdale Area Committee at least. Any further questions on it? Okay, so it's now over to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny to have a look at these in more detail. I'm content to note those, okay? Item 5 is the review of the scheme for the establishment of community councils in Dumfries and Galloway, and a report from the Director of Communities. The report provides members with an update following the 3rd phase of consultation on the review of the scheme for the establishment of community councils in the region, which was carried out in accordance with the relevant legislation and is agreed at a meeting of the full council held on the 20th of September 2016. The report and appendices outline the process which has been undertaken to date, including the responses received, and propose that the review be extended for a further 8 weeks. This is to ensure that the proposed amendments to the scheme, as detailed in Appendix 4, are clear and transparent and in line with the approach taken throughout the review process. Members will be aware, of course, that an updated version of the report was issued on Friday, which corrected some fairly minor typing or calculation errors, but hopefully everybody has seen those. Kirsty Peden is here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. Questions, members? Sorry. Ian Howie, yeah, Councillor Howie.
Sorry, page 47, item 11.8, community benefit funds. The wording is suggestive that there should be an audit trail. They should kind of implies that it's a recommendation as opposed to a requirement. I think the wording should be stronger, to make sure that it's a requirement and not merely a recommendation that's been made.
Thanks, Councillor Howie. There is a theme within the proposed amended scheme, really, where we are trying not to be overly prescriptive wherever possible. And I'm confident that the scheme provides for the opportunity for the Council to investigate if there are any concerns around sort of the use of public funds. However, I'm also aware that the Audit Manager would be content with either word should or shall, having previously heard a concern on this particular word.
Good try. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. I've got one or two questions, Kirsty. The first one is on the increase of the maximum permitted members. And I just pick out Kakubri because that's one I know, and it's on page 27 rather, I think. Where is it? No, 29. No, 27. And I noticed that in 2014, the maximum permitted numbers was 12, but we're now moving, the proposal is for the maximum permitted members is 17. Now, I understand that that is not a problem, really, but I think what we're setting up here is possibly community councils finding it difficult enough to get 12 members to stand for their community council. 17 is quite a lot more. And whilst the community council will still be established without having the full quantity, I think psychologically you're setting them up to not be able to achieve their maximum number. And I know you've got a formula and a threshold, but I'm just wondering if we could revisit that formula to make it less onerous on community councils to reach that maximum number if they find it difficult. I don't know if you understand quite what I'm saying, but I do think it's difficult. They find it difficult to recruit enough members. And it also looks as though you're kind of trying to avoid elections. And I don't think that's a good idea. That's not what this is set up to do, is to make it so difficult that we never have a community council election, because I don't think that's what we should be doing. The other two things which came up at a community council meeting last night was, and I tried to find it and I can't see it, but they were under the impression that a secretary had to be an elected member of the community council and could no longer be just employed as a secretary for somebody in the community or out with the community doing a secretarial job. So I just would like clarifying on that. And also there was the issue of postal and proxy votes. And I've just been trying to find it and I can't find either of those things. Sorry, so that was 4 things.
If I take the role of the office bearers and the secretary, that's probably an easier one for me just to confirm that yes, we are seeking for the appointment of office bearers and to have office bearers appointed from the elected membership. However, although there could be a secretary appointed, they can certainly still have, for example, a minute secretary or somebody to help with the functioning of that. But we would require for an elected member of the Community Council to be named as secretary, just to act as the point of contact. But I know that there are many community councils who use somebody else to do the sort of administrative side of things and organise a lot of the communication, and that is still provided for within 6.2 of the scheme.
I just have to... And I would propose that we don't go forward with that.
I could respond to your inquiry regarding the minimum maximum number. Certainly there is a formula that's proposed within the table set out at 3.9, and that table certainly has a focus on the minimum number. So I would suggest that we are certainly trying to make sure that community councils are more sustainable by having amended the scheme to focus on the minimum number of elected members, and that by focusing on the minimum number, we have enhanced, if you like, the role of the elected community councils within the community council itself. So the extension to the maximum number is the reason why we want to go back for the 8-week sort of sense check, because I'm conscious that community councils, when they have signed up to having a reduced minimum number, may not have understood the implications for their maximum numbers. And that's entirely the purpose of going back out to have that conversation with them, just to check about the implications of that and to hear if there are any significant concerns. But it certainly isn't in a bid to avoid elections. In fact, we've introduced within the body of the scheme a simpler election process where community councils can carry out the filling of vacancies with elections throughout the period of the term and not have to wait for the 4-yearly annual elections.
Sorry, Chair, can I just... Yeah, so with the threshold, I understand you've got a formula that works, and I quite understand that that's there. So, but could you change the thresholds for the maximum and still achieve what you're trying to do?
The thresholds outlined at Table 2 could be altered. I think the reason why they are recommended as such is that 70% of our community councils currently are of less than 1,000, and I think that's something that we've been mindful of throughout the consultation and when we've proposed amendments to the existing scheme, is that the majority of our community councils, as I'm sure you all well know, are of small population bases and are covering small geographic areas. The thresholds could be looked at. I certainly would be supporting the basis that we need a higher minimum number where they are representing larger areas of population. And that's why I suppose we've tried to create a sliding scale where, for example, the two community councils that represent areas of more than 5,500 are being asked to have a minimum number of 8 to just reflect that they are representing a greater number of voters, if you like, than the small majority that are under 1,000.
Councillor Carruthers?
I just had 2 others, postal and proxy votes.
Postal vote has something that has come up through the consultation. It's something that there are a few other local authority areas looking at. I think for currently, given the just the allocation of resourcing with regards to community councils and the resources required to undertake postal voting for community council elections would be significant at this stage, and is therefore is not something that we've looked at in detail for the scheme at this point.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you, Leader. Taking into consideration the points that I think Patsy's been making there, when I was looking through this myself, see what the purpose of the report is here. So at 2.1 we've been asked to note, which is fair enough. 2.2 and 2.3, which is on page 9, we've been asked to consider. So we're actually being asked to make a decision or form a view in regards to that. Again, at 2.4 is to note, 2.5 is to consider, so we're again another view. But 2.6, it goes actually, we're asked to agree the review process be extended for 8 weeks. And I just wondered, on the back of the question that being asked, potential maybe further involvement with members, group discussions, so on and so forth, would it be appropriate, would there be any detriment if we actually deferred the bulk of this out, so rather than just no consider, we don't have to, if it's not essential to consider and make these decisions in the 2 recommendations that I've, 3 recommendations that I've referred to, would it be more appropriate just to defer this back to September and reconsider the full amount after having further discussions in regards to Kirsty? I know came round the groups and spoke to us all. We're much wiser in regards to that. I agree with the thrust of what's here, particularly about Table 2, where it refers to the minimum requirement. That's where I've certainly seen the weaknesses when they've been disestablished, when you've got the quota for a minimum is certainly becomes a problem, and it's been a problem in certainly my ward recently. So if I would like just further discussion, I would like to, if we could consider this in September in full at that point, and there's no detriment meanwhile, further than going, but I mean, I think going back out and speaking to the community councils, even wider consultation, if it comes to over the next 8 weeks and having the groups getting a chance to reconsider, because we've got the fullest information here, we haven't just got a few days to consider it, we've got the next 2 months. So I think it'd probably be the best route forward, Leader. Hear what your thoughts are, but I would certainly propose it if it was required.
I'll ask Kirsty for comment on that. The sense I have is actually there's been considerable consultation over the last couple of years on this issue. I mean, I appreciate there may be that perhaps Councillor Galloway has picked up an issue that her community council, one of her community councils, is concerned about. I'm not sure that there's really a need to go for yet another round of consultation, other than on the to get the sort of sense check of community councils and in terms of what their feelings are. Kirsty.
Thanks, Chair. I'm keen that the sense check that we carry out over the next 8-week period is actually focused around the minimum and maximum numbers. And I'm very keen to have a conversation with those community councils who are impacted on, more significantly. And I do suggest it's probably a smaller number, and therefore I'm confident that we can carry that out certainly within the 8 weeks and be back, with the report as planned in September for decision.
Because there is a report coming back anyhow. I would hope, would that satisfy you, Councillor Carruthers? That the report will be coming back in September anyway, once we've done the sense check with it.
I think that's probably, I've not made my point very well, that's probably what it's trying to say. Like, it's coming back September, there's 3 decisions there. Should we just make them? Do we need to make them today, or should we just, if we don't need to make them, they're small decisions. It gives us a chance just for groups to fully understand exactly what's going on here, and we're taking the bottom-up approach, which is excellent. We're talking to our community councils first, taking into consideration what their views are, which we should be, that's only right and proper. So it should be that. So if there's no important decisions, if you feel, or the council feels that they are at this moment in time, then fair enough. But when I read it myself, I thought it's not overly important for these 3 small decisions to just do the whole lot again in September.
Thank you, Leader. Just taking on board what Councillor Carruthers is saying, it would strike me, however, what you're saying, Kirsty, is that for the 8-week process to make sense, it actually requires that we've made the decisions in the first place, because they will be, at least in part, the basis of what you're going back out to re-engage with the community councils on. Have I understood that correctly?
That would be correct in terms of, although I'm very clear that we are not going back out for consultation, we are going back out to specifically check that there is nothing basically within there that causes a significant problem for community councils. And I would suggest that's mainly around the maximum and minimum numbers, because there is quite clear feedback, I think, as the leader said, around all other areas. We've gathered the feedback that we've needed throughout phases 1, 2 and 3, and that's presented for members in the table at 3.9.1. So we've got quite a range of feedback from community councils specifically on a number of issues which would allow members to consider it if they so wish.
Okay, Councillor Dougie Campbell and then Councillor Katie Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. My question or my point is pretty much covered by Councillor Davison. I think we've reached a point with this scheme and consultation. I think Kirsty's proposal to go through a process of final due diligence to ensure that community councils understand particularly the mechanism for calculating minimums and maximums, that they do have that understanding. But I think as elected members, we are at the point where we can happily move to the recommendations as stated. Thank you.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my points have probably been covered as well, but I just wanted to actually congratulate the team. There's been a lot of consultation on this, and I've sat in community councils where the community councillors have gone, oh, we've got this back again, right? We have to go through this again. So I think we're actually, I believe, like my colleagues, that we're actually at a point where we need to agree this, get a sense check, ensure the final checks that we are at a point, and I would be happy to support to move to the recommendations.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Leader. I'm slightly more nervous, I have to confess. I think if we go ahead with what's proposed in here, Lockerbie Community Council will have to disband because they're currently sitting with 6 vacancies, and we're proposing that they have to go to 7. And that, I don't think we have done proper due diligence. As I say, Lockerbie will have to disband tomorrow if we agree this.
But all we're being asked to do is actually to go back to the community councils for 8 weeks and then take a report at the next meeting.
Just for clarity, members are not being asked in the recommendations to agree the scheme. The scheme would be agreed as of September, and it's only once members have agreed the final scheme that scheme would come into place. So in your situation, they would be sufficiently established. And also for members, maybe just to highlight that it would be even once the scheme is amended in September, with regards to the minimum and maximum numbers, there would be a suspensive clause that would require that any changes to the numbers would happen at the ordinary elections, which are scheduled for October 2019. So we certainly wouldn't be looking to ask community councillors to stand down or to change their membership until that point in time.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. It was really just to say that the Phase 3 consultation, I think it's very clear the indications coming back from those. I think it's been
a good example of consultation and the questions that have been asked within that, and the community councils have fed that back. I think in the past with the scheme, there was a certain element of setting community councils up to fail, and I think this piece of work is going towards actually making them more sustainable, and that, you know, a lot of that is down to the minimum numbers and also clarity on a number of issues. There is one concern maybe I do have is with regards to increasing the minimum of the likes of Annan, because I do know that they struggle at the moment. So actually having a minimum going up by 2 to 8, but that obviously will come back on when you go back out again. But it's a good piece of work, and I think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay, have we? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. It's just on 3.9.3 regarding co-opted members and community councils being elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council, and I feel that this is something we should avoid if possible, just for cleanliness, if you like. I think it's clear that normally a community councillor who gets elected would probably serve out their term and then stand down at the next community council elections, given that they've been elected to a different office. But I think there's I don't think it sends out the right message if elected members start getting co-opted onto community councils, given that they're ex officio members anyway. I think it sort of seems to go against the spirit of what our role is once we become an elected member.
Councillor Howie.
Thank you, Leader. Just a simple observation. Are you aware that a number of community councils do not meet in July or August? And there's a small number which doesn't meet for both months. So the opportunity for them to look at this is very limited indeed.
Yes, we did have some discussion around this, Kirsty.
We have, Chair, and I think because of the limited number of community councils that are hugely affected by the minimum and maximum number, I don't think it's unsurmountable for us to be able to make contact very specifically. We have gathered the sort of meeting schedules between now and the next full council to ensure that wherever possible we'll have a communication with the community council, and certainly have made every effort to speak to them personally, and provide them with whatever information is required for them to just be able to discuss that with their fellow community councillors. So I'm confident that because it's a sense check and not an extended period of consultation, we'll be able to achieve that.
Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Leader. Just touching on what Councillor Thompson was saying. I was just elected last week, as I clearly declared at the beginning, but I'm not an ex officio of that particular community council. And being a co-opted member, it was to try and redress a balance, because it's quite a big community council area, and rather than having all the people from one village in that area, it was to try and redress a balance. I can understand the reasons behind the table 1, which page 11 to 12, for elected members who are also ex officios. But I'm reading here that there was mixed response about elected members being community councils, in a ward that they actually live in. I could do with a bit of clarity on that, please.
Kirsty.
If members go to page 18 of there's the sort of slightly more detail in terms of the feedback from responses, and you'll find just on page 17 there was a very clear feedback, I think, to the questions around elected members' membership of community councils. Yet when it came to the co-option, not the co-option, but the involvement of an elected member when it was out with their electoral ward, then there was a very mixed response, and I think that's why it's summarised in the body of the report as being mixed, because there was no clear indication either way. It was very balanced. From the 52 responses that are there, it's pretty much 50-50 amongst what people's strength of feeling was, hence why members have been asked to make that decision.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Kirsty and her team have actually done a very good job, in fairness. The only assurance I would like is the monitoring. Is there a monitoring process being put in place, or are you going to be relying solely on 2.6, the complaints handling, Schedule 3?
Thank you. Certainly there is as light touch a monitoring as is required for community councils, in that we have no locus, if you like, to manage the day-to-day business of community councils, with them being standalone organisations. Our duty is to make sure that there is a scheme in place, that scheme meets the needs of community councils and the council, and for that, the implementation of the scheme to be monitored accordingly.
All contributions on this? Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chair. I actually sit on the Community Council across at Langham because I was elected to sit in the Community Council, and then I was elected to become a member of Dumfries and Galloway Council. Now, my understanding is that, on the existing council scheme, there is nothing in the rules, laws, or whatever says that I can't do that. Is that the case?
Yeah, I can confirm that's the case, and we also got a council's opinion that there was nothing in law that prevented an elected member carrying out both roles. And it was really down to our scheme to state our preference for this area, as a number of schemes in Scotland do prevent an elected member also being a community councillor.
And you'll note in 2.3 that's one of the issues we're being asked to consider, as to whether or not we prohibit elected members serving as community councillors, and that would apply to both elected and co-opted members. Councillor Ferguson.
Can I just say, Chair, I think clarification is actually vital on this point, actually. So I agree with that. Clarification should be found to help the situation. Actually, I really think that's a positive situation.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Leader. I'd also like some clarification from the council lawyer or the clerk. If a community council takes a view as a statutory consultee, right, anybody who's on that community council is part of that body corporate. So would that therefore make them unable to contribute in this chamber or any other chamber of this council on any matter where that community council is a statutory consultee?
We've certainly never considered that, but I could see that there could be issues, for an instance, as you probably think, in Councillor Ferguson, on planning matters.
Can I come back in, Leader? Yeah, not only planning matters, I would consider things that come to SIPL, EEI, communities, PNR, audit and risk. Almost every committee, if there's been a statutory consultation process and that committee council has stated a view, then whoever that member would be is bound by that committee council view. So they would obviously have a predisposed position.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's important to bear in mind that there's an issue of public perception here, and if it is perceived by communities that there's a conflict of interest, I think we need to be very mindful of that. And clearly, the existing scheme doesn't mention membership by elected members, but I think it is something that we should be very mindful of. And if there is a lack of reference to the current scheme, that needs to be addressed. And my view is that there is potential for a conflict of interest, and I hope members would understand and appreciate why this particular clause has to be entered into the new scheme to avoid that ever arising as an issue.
Any further contributions on that? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just I mean, on that very one, and just on the very decision we're looking at making today, I mean, could there be a potential conflict if we're making a decision about community councils and we have community councillors here participating in the decision? Is that something we should consider, or is that just Is that how far it could go?
Okay. I understand the clerk's already given advice to individuals on that, but maybe for the benefit of the chamber, you'd like to repeat what that advice has been.
It's a matter for every individual councillor, but my advice has been that I thought it would be useful for members of who were in that position just now to contribute to the debate, since I thought the debate would benefit from hearing of any issues that they find. However, the advice I gave was that they should not vote on that matter.
Thanks. Okay, any further contributions? Can we proceed to the recommendations in that case? Okay, and recommendation 2.1 is to note the summary of the feedback. Are we content to do so? Noted. 2.2 is to consider the proposed amendments as the result of the final phase, and that's fine. Okay, happy with that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Howe. Yes, with the amendment that you suggested. People content with that amendment? Turn to shall, should to shall, yeah. Okay, and 2.3, and this is probably more contentious, is to consider whether there should be a prohibition on elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council serving as community councillors. Now, I think I got the feeling that there were proposals from the floor that there should be. Okay, is there any opposition to that? Okay, so we're content to suggest that it should be a prohibition. Councillor McClelland.
Leader, could I just ask for some clarity there, because the table that we're considering, the fourth point on there, should it be permitted for a Dumfries and Galloway Council member to be co-opted to a community council? Are we actually agreeing that the prohibition is in full? Yeah, I'm just asking for clarity, Leader.
Well, the sort of learnings, the wording of is that it should be a prohibition on elected members serving as community councillors. It doesn't distinguish between elected and co-opted members. Councillor Kravitz.
I think I'm supportive of the evidence, the body evidence that we have, and that would state from the community councils themselves that they don't think the Dumfries and Galloway Council should be a member of a community council. Taking into consideration, that sounds like we're almost what we're about to agree, but I think there's a valid point. If you live within a community, you live out with the ward that you represent. That's been made. If we're taking a freedom away from an individual where there's no conflict whatsoever, I wouldn't see as being able to represent themselves at a community level. So I can say that again if needed later. But I think if we do this as carte blanche, then that means when it's imposed, one elected member would have to stand down who's been co-opted on.
So your proposal would be that it only applied to the area where a councillor represented. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I was just going to seek clarity on that point. I believe that for clarity, really, because you can get into ambiguity with regards to the wards, etc., I think it should be a blanket ban, so I would propose that.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
I think that goes back to the argument that it doesn't matter whether you're a community councillor on a community council out with your representative area. If you're still making a statutory decision on, for example, planning was given within that community council, you've made that decision within that community council as an individual. So therefore, we need to bar yourself from a decision in the council. So therefore, to make it cleaner, I support Sean's motion.
In that case, I'm correct to say there's a motion from Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, that it should apply to all community councillors. Councillor Tate. Okay, so there's a motion. Councillor Gilroy.
For clarity, are we talking about elected and co-opted, or just elected?
Yes. All elected members would not be able to serve on a community council. Is that agreed? Agreed, thanks. 2.4, we note, which is the requests. 2.5, considering the proposed amendment to Schedule 1, I think, and how this would affect the existing membership. Any feelings about that? 3.94. That has to come back. That has to come back on the maximum minimum. So that will be decided at the next meeting, okay? So in that case, do we agree to extend the review process by 8 weeks? Yep. and agree that a further report comes back to be considered by full council. Okay, grand. Okay. We can move on to item 6, is the IJB strategic plan. The report advises members of the outcome of the Dumfries and Galloway Strategic Planning Group's review of the current Integrated and Joint Board Strategic Plan 2016-19 and gives notice of its decision of the 5th of April 2018 to retain the strategic plan subject to the minimal update and refresh of certain elements for the next 3 years to April 2021. Lillian Kringles is here to respond to any questions members may have on the report, but we also need to remember that this is here for noting and that the plan can't actually be amended by the council at this stage. There are other opportunities where the council can influence the strategic plan. Any questions? Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. This was brought up within Wigtonshire Area Committee, and it was just a question in terms of the boundaries of the localities. Now, certainly the Community Council area of Kirkmabrek was previously part of Stewartry, it's now part of Wigtonshire, and it was just to confirm where that fell within the IJB areas and in terms of the localities of how that's set up. The information was requested at Area Committee, but as yet hasn't been received. So I was just wondering if you had any further information.
Lillian, I wonder if you could introduce your colleague from NHS as well.
This is Linda Owens, the Strategic Planning Manager from the Health and Social Care Partnership. In terms of the question, member, I haven't had that request for clarity from the Area Committee, so I need to get that information and come back. I'm not sure what the request is. Apologies, I haven't received that.
Just to clarify, it's whether Freetown and the surrounding area is considered as part of Wigtonshire or whether it's considered part of Stewartry from an NHS point of view. From a council point of view, it's now part of Wigtonshire, and there wasn't clear information as to which area, in terms of our reports that we receive at Area Committee, whether it's including statistics in Freetown area.
I would anticipate that it would be Wigtonshire, but could you allow me to check that, and I'll come back to full council with that information.
Thank you. Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Leader. I did receive a response to that question, and it was very clear that Creetown and Kersleuth are part of Wigtown locality. But for some reason, other members of the Area Committee were not copied in.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Heslop.
Thank you. Just with regard to the 3.10 in the report, where we've got the areas that are going to be looked at, revisiting the commitments, the last bullet point, when will we have sight of what they plan to do within that, and will there be performance information? Because at the last Nithsdale Area Committee we had 16 performance indicators, 11 of which had no data because they hadn't been decided yet and were still in the process. So I take it that'll be another 3 years before we get to see the new data, because it was a work in progress. And of the 5 that we did get, 3 of them were, I can't remember the exact words, but irrelevant was the thing, and we should actually get new indicators for those. That's maybe not the wording used, but that's the sort of way I picked it up, that they weren't effective indicators and we need to do it. So is there any performance indicators to be updated within the strategic plan?
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. If I could answer the second part of the question, and I'll ask Linda to answer the first part. It was certainly raised, it's been raised at all the area committees about the relevance of the performance information that's coming forward, and we have, through the IJB and through the Clinical and Care Governance Committee, agreed that we need to look at having much clearer performance information reported, and that's been worked on currently, and we are looking at a mechanism which will allow the information that comes through the Health and Social Care Partnership to be more up to date than the current situation where it's 9 months out of date. So we are working on that, and I certainly will be able to provide an update once we have an outcome from the clinical and care governance. And I'll ask Linda to answer part one.
We're currently working on doing the small revisions. It will need to go back through the IGB first before it comes back to yourselves, but that process has started. I think it's due for either the IGB in either July or September, so it will be within the next few months.
Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Nicholson.
No, I agree with the report. It's just to note as well, and it's actually in the body of the report, that we do still reserve the powers are reserved by Dumfries and Galloway Council, in which include reviewing the delivery of the strategic plan on an annual basis in relation to the functions delegated by a local authority. In other words, we still have a say in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Okay. Happy to note the decision? Done. Yeah. Okay. Item 7 is the Economic Climate Report to which I referred at the beginning of the meeting. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the current economic challenges and the opportunities within the region and how we may realise the potential of these opportunities. The report gives a summary of the ongoing activities, including the approach made to SOSEP regarding the potential release of funds to support the response to the announcement of Young Seafood in respect of the future of their Annan site. And that was an instruction from the Council at its last meeting. A decision is awaited from the Cabinet Secretary. Unfortunately, the process seemed to be a lot more long-winded than I think that the Council actually expected at the time that we made the request, but hopefully we will hear soon. There's quite a lot of different items in the report. Jan Faulkner is here with David Gardner and another colleague whose name I haven't been provided with. Lynn Burgess, to respond to any questions members may have. Can I ask Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Leader. I think this has been quite a good report, and I welcome the fact that we are recognising that we do have a problem. And recognising there is a problem is always the first step to resolving the problem. So I welcome the clarity of this report, also the concise and direct nature of it. But there's been something that's been a concern of mine for quite some time, and again, it's recognised in 3.10 that we've not been receiving perhaps our share of Scottish Government money. Dumfries and Galloway's not been perhaps pursuing it properly. I would like to find out why that is the case and how we plan to go forward with this so that we do. I know we say lobbying, but what sort of strategy are we going to take forward? Also, the grant programme referred to in 3.9, again, that's another really good and positive idea. But in the past, we've found a lot of these grant schemes have been bogged down with a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that businesses haven't really been engaged with properly. We've not marketed it. We've almost, I think, given the impression that we've potentially got this money to give out, but actually really, we don't really want to. We're kind of quite happy to keep a hold of it. And I would, Leader just referred to a similar circumstance with your long-winded remark about the application for funding from Scottish Government. And this is the thing that concerns me, because we need to get this money out to the SMEs to actually start to get them to build and start employing people. So, on the whole, a good report.
Can you respond to the points that Councillor Johnson has made?
Okay. So I'll answer the second part with regards to the grants. So the grants is an idea to apply to the Scottish Government through SOSEP to get funding. Obviously, in terms of funds that we have had previously, we had the Financial Assistance Grant, which was very successful, led by the Council, was well marketed throughout the region, and a lot of small micro businesses actually did access it. Sometimes the reference can be to some of the national schemes in terms of access to, so things like Regional Selective Assistance or the Food Manufacturing, which are national schemes, which get marketed centrally. But what we have been doing is forwarding on our own social media and promoting that out within the regions. So, and with our advisors trying to promote that, the grant access. In terms of clients being able to access, we obviously have to have a diligence process, but the idea is to try and make that appropriate for the amount of funding that is being given out. So simplistically, if it's a small grant of say £5,000, then actually try and make that process very light. But if it's something a bit chunkier, 50 to 100,000, then obviously it needs to be a bit more robust, but it's about making it appropriate. And obviously we want to get the funds out and make sure it's used appropriately.
And regarding the food aspect, we really need, it is our aim to lobby with Scottish Government, because we have some of the largest food production in the country. We have some of the most innovative companies, but they do not seem to be getting their share. So we need to promote, but we also need to back up our businesses. So that's essentially what our game plan is, and it's how it is, and giving them the offer that's there, and that is working hand in glove with our businesses here. So that's in a nutshell, that is our way forward.
Sorry, in terms of regional selective assistance, which is one of the biggest national grant schemes, we actually did 7 of these last year, which represents, which was done through Business Gateway, represented 10% of the actual total of the whole of Scotland, which is the first time we've actually been able to achieve that. So for me, that's quite a major success. So we're working on that to try and get more clients to be aware of it. And we have to do that through some of the intermediaries as well to make sure that they're aware of the national schemes and get engagement with them so that our clients can access that funding.
Thank you for that. I do have a particular concern, and I think Jan's addressed part of it, with particularly with micro and SMEs, that they need assistance to go through the whole application process. A lot of people find it quite daunting. If you've only got 4 or 5 staff, it's unlikely that you're going to have a qualified financial expert on the team, and people need a bit of assistance to work their way through these sort of things. Because every barrier that you put in the way of people applying and for getting the money is just putting the brakes onto this whole programme.
Okay, so for the smaller schemes, so again, an example of £5,000, then they would get some advisory support from a Business Gateway advisor. The application is a light touch business plan and a 1-page application form normally, so it's fairly light. When you get your national schemes like regional selective assistance, then it often involves an accountant, but quite often they can get funding towards that. So sometimes it can be 30 or 50% of funding to actually get the business plan done for them, so there is support.
Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'm pleased Councillor Johnson, likes the idea of this report coming forward. I think it's important that we have to look at all the sort of priorities when we look at economic development. And certainly within the E&I committee, we've had to make some difficult decisions over the last few months. Just coming to the report itself, I'm pleased that it shows some of the issues within Dumfries and Galloway and some of the priorities that we need to look at moving forward. However, when I look at the recommendations, and 3.11 at the back page of the report talks about, a paper will be presented to Economy, Environment, Infrastructure Committee in July 2018 detailing the refocused service that can respond. I'm all for that, but E&I committee have to make that report, that decision on the report that actually comes here. So I would only make a decision that 2.5 would be, we note rather than agree the economic development services, and we will make the decision in E&I at the E&I committee in July.
I would say, yeah, the chair of EI correctly protects the interests of EI. This is not actually for full council to make in advance of EI making that decision. So we should really change the wording of that section to note that the paper will be presented to EI. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. I noted that section 3.2 highlights a new facility, food and drink innovative centre being built at Kellerholm. And I also note it's being built on land, it's proposed that it is built on land owned by Brown Brothers. Could you clarify the relationship between Brown Brothers and this initiative? And also, as an elected member for the Food Town, I'm hoping you would support Food and Drink Innovation Centre to support the many small and medium food businesses around Castle Douglas, and perhaps consider such a centre for the centre of Dumfries and Galloway.
So the concept in Kellerholm is just really came to fore in the last couple of weeks, and it's something that we're looking to do a paper to SOSEP for, and we linked it into the college application because they have got an application for a STEM facility. So part of the concept of this is I guess is for training for Brown Brothers who have a big demand for engineering training, and it's about upskilling people and giving them transferable skills, but also linking it into the college concept in terms of food and other training for the community, and using the whole digital aspect of it. So basically the college's application is you can be anywhere and access training remotely, and so this is the concept is around a spoke idea for it. So it is at a very early stage in terms of looking to see how we could actually pull that together, and that also goes for Castle Douglas in terms of having a food centre. The one caveat I would put on that is that the Scottish Government are concerned about the number of centres of excellence around food that are growing throughout the country. So we just need to make sure that any application that we put in is appropriate and is innovative and appropriate for the area.
Councillor Wood and Councillor Dempster, were those questions on this particular issue that you wanted to raise? Because you'd indicated you wanted to speak, so I had Councillor Dempster. I wondered if it was on this issue. No. Okay. Councillor Dempster, is this on this issue?
Hey, thanks, Chair. No, I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity just to say that in 3.2 it talks about Brown Foods acquiring a site. I don't think we've taken credit for the fact that we supported that both at Nithsdale Area Committee level and in Policy Committee, and I think it's useful to note that we work closely with Brown Foods. And I spoke to the Chief Executive just a couple of days ago, Lee Godfrey, and he was very keen to praise David Gardner and Jan for the work they're doing with the company. And maybe offline, Jan can maybe update me on the slight delay that's taking place, because it talks about a hugely exciting expansion that happened this financial year. And I know there's been a couple of changes to the date for commencement of works, and Brown Foods are very keen to develop their site. They're a very forward-thinking company. And as I say, they're very strong in their praise of the staff that work with them in delivering this project. And we did assist them in making that land available, and that's maybe not highlighted in the report. It's not criticism, but sometimes we underplay the role that the council actually plays in supporting businesses throughout the region. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carruthers, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Hagman, Councillor Dougie Campbell and Councillor Wood. So, Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Leader. Just to agree, I think, with Councillor Johnston. In particular, a lot of comments made I agree with, but Councillor Johnston in particular in regards to 2.3, I think he's absolutely right when he mentions the grants. That has to be as a simpler process as possible. He also said it's absolutely a good report. I would agree with that as well. It's been proactive and it's looking forward, but probably the point of what Malcolm's already covered that, so just to agree with him. But I think for your point of view, I picked up as being Scottish Government are dragging their feet. We thought we're coming in here today to get some kind of announcement. So for the leader's perspective, of the council leader, I wonder, how do we stop Scottish Government dragging their feet? How do we actually make sure that we get our share of the pie? Whether it's you, whether it's EI, we need to understand what that is, because we can't sit here and accept that.
SOSEP, it was actually, and I understand the process which SOSEP was using in order to assess the grants, so it actually took a lot longer and was considerably more bureaucratic than anybody had expected. And they also, that SOSEP can't approve themselves because they are not accountable. They're not actually. They have then to go to the government to seek approval. So it turned out to be a rather more tortuous process than perhaps we had hoped.
I wonder, do we have an update and leader for yourself in regards to where we sit with that? How long will it take, do you think?
I'll ask the others if they have any idea. I mean, I understand that the SOSEP board unanimously approved our application and it is now with the Ministers and the Cabinet Secretary for final approval.
That's correct. SOSEP cannot, the partnership cannot approve the funding because the funding comes from the Scottish Government. So they've sent what they have approved through to the Cabinet Secretary. It will be up to the Cabinet Secretary to make that decision.
Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Leader. I too welcome the what I think is an element of growing cross-party support for the actions that are set in this paper. I think that would be rather a good message to be communicating to the region. I don't think that we have ever pretended or stated, whether it's as a council or as a member of or participant in the action groups in response to pennies, for example, that we will necessarily have all the answers or that we can predict what is going to happen. What we have promised is effort based on diligent research and evidence. And I think that's what we are demonstrating here in this approach, which is both in response to the situation in Ireland, but of course the wider economic fragility that other more recent announcements have suggested is becoming apparent. I would like to pick up, I guess, Councillor Johnston's point on lobbying. Actually, the Economic Development Agency, as it will become in 2020, is a good example of us lobbying successfully. Originally, there was no particular support for that. The case was made locally. It gathered cross-party support locally. It was based on evidence and was clearly argued. It had a very clear, straightforward objective, and it was ultimately successful. In my view, if we apply that discipline to the lobbying that we undertake, and I think that the suggestions around access to money to resource food and drink and the development of that sector is an excellent opportunity. If we address that priority by that approach, we might very well be successful. I think perhaps there has been a tendency in the past in this authority to end up with a very, very long list of things for which we are going to lobby, and it becomes so long that there's almost a risk that it's the shopping list that you turn up in Edinburgh with. If we're going with very clearly focused, well-argued and clearly evidenced cases, the recent experience, which has in fairness resulted in the creation of the first economic development agency since I think 1964, would suggest that we are likely not only to get a fair hearing, but also to see substantial action arising as a result of it. I think it's an approach that we need to be pursuing vigorously, and I regard this report as the useful first step in that direction. But as I say, I think that the cross-party approach to it, which seems to be developing, and I hope will be reflected when we come to the recommendations, is, if anything, a substantial benefit, and I certainly welcome it.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman, followed by Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I just want to really sort of reiterate some of the points made by Deputy Leader there of actually this is a really positive way forward. In terms of the food and drink industry, we're sitting with a huge asset here in Dumfries and Galloway. The export industry of food and drink to Scotland is huge. It was worth approximately £6 billion last year and of an increase of 11%. So there is an absolutely enormous market for food and drink, and we have some absolutely excellent producers here right across the region from east to west. And I think it's absolutely welcome that we look at ways to move this forward. So yes, I just want to say that I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dougie Campbell, followed by Councillor Underwood.
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to turn to paragraph 3.5. I think it's very welcome that the SOSEP agenda is relating to community empowerment, and I'm really pleased to see that that's going to permeate through our support for businesses across Dumfries and Galloway. I'm just looking for a wee bit of clarification on what this paragraph is actually what it actually means, because there's reference to projects in 4 Dumfries and Galloway communities to support business growth, and also an element of this work being led by the Highlands and Islands Enterprise. Could you tell us a bit more about those community funding applications and the relationship with the HIE, please?
Yes, the Highlands and Islands Enterprise Agency is helping and leading on this initiative. The initiative is being led by Anne MacDonald, who is one of their lead officers. Expressions of interest were sent out to all South of Scotland development trusts, And in Dumfries and Galloway, the successful development trusts were Stranraer Development Trust, Kakubri Development Trust, Kellerholme and Kirkconnell Development Trust, and the Eskdale Development Trust. And essentially what they were looking for the capacity building is to help them with staffing for the capacity building so that their projects, like the Oyster Festival, like a range of projects, can be account managed, which is a new thing for the south of Scotland, but it's also taking it from the business support side of it and relevant products. And that is so different, but it's so similar to what they have in Highlands and Islands. The opportunity here with the 7 organisations across the south of Scotland is to tailor the community place support and to ensure that what we actually come out with is appropriate for community groups in the south of Scotland. That is, it's not just off the shelf, let's use something in Highlands and Islands enterprise and deliver it. Let's make sure it's tailored for the communities that we have in this area and make sure that it's focused around about place and the place elements that are relevant.
Councillor Wood, followed by Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to build on what's happened in the past with our engagement with businesses. We did a very good week with the Business Week last year, and I felt it was an extremely positive contribution. And out of that, I got a lot of response from businesses about, it's all very well having community empowerment, but why not have business empowerment where you actually have a proper working forum, bringing businesses together with elected members, a cross-party forum, actually get down to what business in this area really wants and not what you perceive it to want. I've spoken with John Glenn on a few occasions. I know there are estates out there that are desperately keen to engage very closely with the council, and yet we don't seem to be, or at least there's a perception of resistance about pulling this together, and I would really welcome such an idea to come forward. Is this possible? Can we do something like that in the very near future? Because there's no point in having an excellent business week and then forget about it for the rest of the year.
This is part of the reason, through the Chair, that we are refocusing our service, because we don't have enough of the right resource to be able to pull that, to get that type of group together. It's not that we're unwilling, there is so much that we're doing, hence why we will be taking a paper through to the EEI committee that will map out how we will refocus and how we'll help empower our businesses and how we'll make certain that we're delivering on the council's priorities. And that's the reason for this paper, to give you a flavour of what we're doing, but also to show that there's a big breadth of work that is there. We've got a small team. We've got to refocus and make sure it's delivering the council's priorities.
Councillor Wood?
Can I respond to that? I think if you were to engage with these estates and businesses, you would find there probably is a financial support there as well. Their willingness is so great that they would put their hands in their pockets to support such an initiative. And I think that while I do accept and appreciate we have limited capacity, you can build your limited capacity by utilising the business that want to engage with its council. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall, followed by Councillor Maitland.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just in relation to 3.8, hopefully we will get a positive confirmation through from the Cabinet Secretary with regards to the request for this 250,000 funding. When the report comes to EEI, though, probably what we'd like to see is it's important that we get this specialist team in, but I think one of the things that I mentioned in the original motion was that this team has to be centred on a high street premise in Annan. And it's only yesterday we're meeting with trade unions at Pennies, and we're expecting the first tranche of people to leave by the end of this month, of over 100. And I think one of the things that they said was it was important that this has got to be a long, drawn-out process. So apart from looking at business growth and projects within the DG12 area, I think there is a realisation that the Pinnies workforce want ongoing support. So if we can actually, I just want assurance that we're looking at a possible high street premise, because that would not only house this team, but also we could get pace in on an ongoing basis to help with people that are leaving Pinnies and to help with some of the business that are affected within the DG12 area. So I'm just looking for a little bit more, and hopefully once we have got confirmation of the funding, then a fuller report will come to EI explaining how we're actually going to take this forward.
Okay, so absolutely we are, rather than just waiting an announcement, trying to look at the construction of the team and also looking at premises. So we are looking at the High Street, and also Scottish Enterprise have got some units at Annan Business Park. And we're just looking at these are possibilities in terms of, because obviously what we want to do is also deliver workshops and have the facility there. So we're looking at some options there, looking at the staff, and obviously in terms of Pinnies, we're PACE are still working there closely just now. Employment Services are working there. I've got a conversation with Bill Showwater, who's the Chief Exec, tomorrow, so we're still looking at the inward investment and any legacy as well. So we're still tackling a number of things. And obviously once the team is set up, we will look at opportunities for growing the economy as part of it. But we'll obviously, I get the point about the High Street, and I'll take that on board and see what units are available, as long as we can make sure that they're appropriate and will do the job for us.
Councillor Maitland, followed by Councillor Wilson.
My point's been covered, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Leader. I welcome this report, and I appreciate that we could write a really in-depth report about everything the council's doing, everything that's going on. But I appreciate that it would be maybe 10 times the papers we've got sat in front of us. There's a couple of things that I wanted to raise for information to get out today, but also some reports that I think could come back or to be reported either to EI or Policy Resources or to another full council regarding some of the specifics around Dandale and Eskdale. As a local member, and all local members will know, it's a challenging time, particularly in Annan, and I know that I speak to workers every day, every week, about some of the issues that are coming up. In 3.2, it talks about the Ministerial Action Group, and I know that there's supposed to be updates coming quite regularly, but I'm not really aware of what the Action Group is doing thus far, and it'd be good to get some sort of an update as to actually what's been going on. I think at the beginning of the process there was a number of tasks that were going to be carried out by particular agencies, and I'm none the wiser as to actually if those have been fulfilled, because I think that some of those tasks that were set at the very beginning will be an important part of the task force should we secure that money through SOSEP. Also as well, in Annan, there's a number of external support organisations who are really starting to max out even before redundancies have started at Pinnies, and I wonder if there's the scope there for officers to work with external organisations in Annan who are on the ground. I know that Diecast and Kate's Kitchen are quite struggling, and I think it would be important to understand the impact on those organisations who are providing support to the community, and will continue to provide that support to the community for as long as it's needed. And I think that it's important that we have an understanding as to how those external organisations are affected and any support that they need. As well, I think that there needs to be a focus on trying to create jobs in Annan as soon as possible, in Annan and right across the region. And so one of the things that has been talked about is Chapel Cross, and that would be a fantastic project and would help to create jobs, but I think that we need to make sure that that's as soon as possible. And I know that members in Andale and Eskdale will be aware of the sort of project around Chapel Cross, and it's reported to various external organisations, but I'm not entirely sure when there was a report about Chapel Cross taken at either EEI or full council, and it would be good to get a report on that sort of as soon as possible, particularly on when the NDA plans to transfer land and when that would be made available to the council, but then how quickly then can we get organisations in investing on the site, and any investment that would be required through Borderlands, and if we're able to get that sooner rather than later to create those jobs. And I think, so one last point I'd like to make, I think it's missing from the report about Edinburgh Wool and Mill. I appreciate that hopefully there will be no job losses in Langham, but one thing that I think I've picked up is that Edinburgh Wool and Mill currently provide transport from Carlisle to Langham for their employees, and it's my understanding that they are only going to carry out that from Langham to Carlisle for a temporary basis. At the moment, the theme certainly seems to be around inclusive growth, and not having that transport in place for 50 employees when they've been providing it for 150 employees thus far seems to be against that inclusive growth. And I wonder if there is scope to remit to the Economic Development Service to work with Edinburgh Wool and Mill in ensuring that we secure that transport for the employees who otherwise will incur a great cost in having to travel from Langham to Carlisle and back 5 working days. Thanks, Leader.
So there's a number of points there. There's one where a report on what the the actions the task force has been taking and the results of that, because there are obviously a whole load of different agencies, not just the council, involved in that. There's excuse me, high pollen count. We want to also find out what's happening about the Chapel Cross site, which has been discussed for years as to whether what was going to be what was going to happen to the Chapel Cross site and what developments could happen on that, and where that actually sits at the moment. There's the issue of support for those agencies which support people who are made redundant and who may be under stress in the Annandale area. And then there's the issue about Wool and Mill, and whether, because at the moment it looks like the transport from Langham to Carlisle is temporary rather than long-standing as it was in the other direction. So if we could have some clarification on those.
I'll do the Chapel Cross part, and then between my colleagues next door to me, they'll do the remainder. So the Chapel Cross is being accelerated due to bringing in the specialist local solutions team. We will be accelerating our work, and we're still in negotiations with the Nuclear Decommissioning Agency on transferring assets. And we are still working jointly with them because they fund 2 of my staff members. So there is still joint working. We will come with an update, and we usually do update about Chapel Cross. That usually goes to the EEI committee. And now I'll just hand over to David regarding the action.
Okay, so the action group, we do regular updates, members updates, and the last one was actually Friday, which gave an update on the action group and the work that's been done. But just to bring everybody up to date, I guess, Scottish Enterprise...
Say on that, I mean, it's members' updates, it doesn't actually involve members of the council, because members of the council don't get the update. I think that's really what the position is, that we would like that information to be shared with council members as well.
So in terms of the partners on that group, there's a number of partners: Skills Development Scotland, Scottish Enterprise. I represent the council, and we work closely with the Minister and John Davison, who's the head of food and drink for Scottish Government. Scottish Enterprise, for their part at the moment, have just commissioned a report with Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service and with Resource Efficiency to look at the site in terms of its flexibility or adaptability. If we got an interested party, could we actually restructure the site to make it work differently? We have one formal expression of interest in terms of the site, and one other interested party who's looking at the site. The original interest from a couple of the smokehouses have seemed to have disappeared. Probably as a result of Penny's having some issues around covenants in terms of selling to competition. So there's been a bit of a restriction on that, and also probably finding out the costs of running the site in terms of overheads, which are substantial. So, for example, rates is about £250,000 per annum for the site alone. But we are pursuing in terms of inward investment. We have also given an update in terms of some of the wider issues for Youngs in terms of their contractual work and what that might have an effect both in Annan and in their main sites in Grimsby. PACE are working, we are part of PACE, so Lynn's team in terms of employment services are part of it, Business Gateway are in there, so we've been delivering workshops on self-employment, including delivering them in Polish. Lynn's team is in terms of working with the staff in terms of CVs, applying for other jobs. We've been working with Two Sisters in terms of jobs there, Dawnfresh and a number of other sites. And obviously working with the staff representatives in terms of the whole process. Also working with the Chief Executive in terms of some demands from the government's point of view on the site itself, and also supporting the staff in terms of any moves, which covers transportation as well, so that if people are moving to jobs, low-paid jobs, for example, in England, how are they going to get there and actually still be sustainable? So there are conversations around that as well. There is a jobs fair which has been lined up for the 19th of July. So again, we're looking to a number of businesses in the area that are looking to recruit, and we have a list of clients that, again, with Scottish Enterprise that are account managed, that are potentially recruiting over the next number of months. And obviously getting given an opportunity for the staff at Pennies to apply for these jobs. So again, there's quite a bit of work in terms of coordinating that, especially around shift work as well, to make sure that they can access that. So there is a lot going on in terms of the whole Pennies situation. Jan has also mentioned Chapel Cross, and interestingly, part of hopefully the action team going forward, we have been getting, or I've had a number of inward investment inquiries in the last few weeks as well, not just for the Pennies site, but for other locations, including Chapel Cross. They're commercially sensitive at this stage, but hopefully they will bring economic growth if we can get them over the line. Our challenge is we've got a lot of greenfield sites and not shovel-ready sites. So we're working that. In terms of Edinburgh Woolen Mill, that's been a bit more challenging. Minister, again, Paul Wheelhouse has been leading on that. I did meet with Jason Anderson, who's the Managing Director, some time ago, but at this stage, the company is not really engaging. So conversations around transportation, legacy, any of that has been quite challenging, but I've been pushing with the Minister to try and get further meetings. So if we get anything on that, then we can provide you with an update. Hopefully I've covered your points.
No, I think that's certainly helpful, but I do share the concern. I think it's why members need to be fully updated that there's a need to create jobs, but there is maybe not those shovel-ready projects ready to begin straight away, which is why I think it's important to try and get as many started as quickly as possible to create the jobs that are desperately needed in Annan, but across the whole region.
Councillor Nichols? No, Councillor James, followed by Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're very keen and quick to engage with businesses once they've announced that they're restructuring, closing or leaving. But if I understand Councillor Wood's suggestion, he would like us to be more active in liaising with healthy existing businesses and finding out what they would like in a more sort of bottom-up approach rather than from us down. So I would like to say that I agree with Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's on Councillor Wood's point as well. I would like to know how often that Jan and her colleagues meet with the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Small Businesses, the NFU, and anybody else they can think of, just so that they do know what's happening from the ground up, and they do know what businesses are looking for. And I just would like, I don't need a catalogue of exact meetings, but just some indication of do they meet and how often do they meet?
Thanks.
Operationally, my team is working with the Chamber and many groups on a daily basis and doing it as part of their course. As head of service, I try to meet with as many of these groups as I can. In my first couple of months of being here, I have met with the Chamber, and I've also met with the FSB. but we all meet with a range of businesses, a range of interested parties, and that's all part of our work. But I will take on board what Councillor Wood has said, because in many other areas I've always worked with a range of businesses and met with them in group regularly. And the other part that I've always done is had director groups, some of the great and the good of our larger businesses, and some of the small and they're very influential of us, very micro businesses. So we take that on board, and that needs to be part of our refocusing, and I believe it will be.
Obviously, it's been extenuating circumstances working with a number of organisations that are closing, but our key focus, and always has been, is about working with growing businesses, and we work with thousands of them every year. We work in conjunction with Scottish Enterprise, who deal with clients that are account managed. We work with companies that are maybe growing by 20,000 per year, up to large organisations that we've already talked about at Browns. We have a massive spectrum of businesses that we work with on a proactive daily basis that our team are working with on a daily basis. So it's not just about dealing with reactionary stuff. We try to be very proactive and strategic with companies.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, followed by Councillor Young.
Thanks, Leader. Just on the back of what Councillor Wood has said, and Councillor James, speak as a farmer, a business background as well. What I'm finding from constituents and people across the area of Dumfries and Galloway, they're quite concerned, when they want to expand their business, they've got planning restrictions and building warrant restrictions. It's taking a long time in process, and road restrictions. We need to try and speed up this process. We need to try and get as many people to invest in Dumfries and Galloway, and we need a strong economy. That's one of the things I've been hearing for years, and it's not been addressed.
Okay, so planning is not obviously within our direct remit, but one of the things that we are doing is working with
economic development.
But one of the things we are trying to do is work much closer with planning, so that actually, if we have a project, that actually we can draw up a project plan and work with planning. So Browns is a perfect example where you're cutting across many departments within the council, whether it be roads, whether it's planning, ourselves in direct business development, but actually trying to pull that together as a team. So actually the client actually only has one person to engage with, but actually we can try and make that happen. So we're trying to do it in a much more speedy and joined up fashion.
And I'd like to add that as part of the local solutions team, planning is a key element in this, and we will have a dedicated planning officer within that team to be able to remove those barriers and to be able to help organisations. And that's the way that we should be looking as a whole when we're undertaking development. And as David says, it is across the spectrum of those particular services that we have that could be barriers, but actually should be enablers.
Thank you. Councillor Young, followed by Councillor Driver.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that David Garner talked about being interested in growing businesses. But, in my ward at the moment, there is a business that's been up for sale for 10 years, and they have announced their intention to close. Surely the fact that it's been up for sale for 10 years, it's a stable business. It wasn't growing. It was a stable, successful business for a long time, but it was off everybody's radar. We should be interested in all businesses, not just growing businesses.
You can bring a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. We will help any willing business, any business that wants to work with us. If businesses wish to succeed and sell on their businesses and want some help, we will help them if they're willing to come with us and willing to work with us. But we cannot impose ourselves onto businesses. So maybe one thing we can do a little bit better is to let businesses know what we can do and how available we are to help them.
Thanks. Councillor Driver, followed by Councillor Johnson.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I think coming along the lines of what Councillor Dempster says earlier on, we tend to undersell about what we do actually here within the council. There was a couple of issues there that was discussed about the many groups that we actually work with. One of those important groups that we work with is the Economic Leadership Group. in Dumfries and Galloway, and that is private businesses as well as public sector organisations as well. And you and I and other members meet with those on a regular basis to see what information that we can get from them and they can get from us to try and improve. With regards to the NFU, I know that the director of EE&I meets with the NFU twice yearly to see what some of the issues are, particularly there when we look at agriculture and forestry to see what's actually happening there. And of course, the director is also the chair of the Timber Route Transport Organisation as well. So there's a lot of things that we're actually doing that we're not advertising ourselves in what we do here in council. So I would agree with Jim Dempster that we don't advertise ourselves well enough, and perhaps that's something we should actually do. Because if members in here didn't care what's going on, then there's something wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Leader. It's good to hear everybody realising that we do have a communication issue. I agree with Councillor Wood as well. I think a more active dialogue with businesses would help. I know of the business in question that's closing. I know the people, and I have done for a number of years. And they're one of these businesses. There's so many of them in Dumfries and Galloway. They ran along quite successfully without any help from anyone, and they're very, very secure in their own business at the time. But economic development does not engage with businesses. You don't go out and tell people what's on or what you can do. I can only speak from a personal experience. I have not had regular contact with the business gateway at all. And I think it is an issue that really, really needs addressing. And I think some form of forum, as Councillor Wood's suggesting, would be an excellent first step.
I don't think people realise what a very small economic development service the council has. Yes, it does have skills and development. 40% of that is funded by the Scottish Government through ERDF, and we have to be very clear what we do on that. We can't go out with it. It's similar with a GAP team. The Business Gateway team is only 4 people, and there's only so many things 4 people can do for a region that is so large as Dumfries and Galloway. This is why we have to refocus, because it's exactly that. We've got very little resource, but we need to focus it as well as we can in order to deliver the council's priorities in a realistic manner. And that's why we will. I'm taking on board everything that you're saying, so are my colleagues, but we also have to be realistic with the resource that we have in hand.
Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, just on that, you know, I've had dealings over a number of years with the economic development team as such, and they put themselves out there for businesses. And just as Jan was saying, you can't lead a horse to water and make it drink, but it's, you know, they've got to show the initiative actually to engage with us as well. I think there's a few Conservative members there should remember the economic development team is small, but it'd been even smaller under their budget cut of £200,000. And also the planning as well. I think the planning, they wanted a cut of £90,000 in their budget, so it would have been even worse under their strategy, I think. So I think the team deserve a pat on the back for all they're doing. I think the support is the best thing they can do in the circumstances, and I think they are looking at refocusing, so I think that will develop in the future.
Thanks. I think we've had a good debate around this issue, and I think we should move now to the recommendations. And the first two are for noting the challenging economic climate and the key strategic services detailed in the report. We intend to do those, 2.1 and 2.2. We also are asked to agree 2.3, contend to agree 2.3, right? And 2.4. Agreed. 2.5 we were going to alter rather than agreeing that to noting that a paper was to be presented to the EEI committee regarding the economic development service. Sorry? For God's sake, it's not agreed by them. Okay, Are we happy to note 2.5? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. It was to put in an additional one of 2.6 that a report comes forward on how we can create such a business forum that is inclusive of cross-party businesses and senior officers.
Yeah, if we could bring something forward on the possibilities of creating some sort of discussion forum with business. Let's move on to item 8, which is the response to the independent inquiry recommendations. The report presents an update on the establishment of a working group to consider and respond to the recent independent inquiry report recommendations. Members are asked for this update and to see the proposed plans to address the recommendations made in the inquiry report. I think we'd have to welcome the consideration that has been given to the, in a very short period since we received a substantial inquiry report, and to recognise the substantial work undertaken and plan to fully address the matters raised within the Council and the handling of the lessons to be learned across the public sector in Scotland. I mean, it's easy to put 2 and 2 together, maybe not come to the right answer, but the fact that the Glasgow School of Art was was commissioned to Keir, and we were advised of problems with fire stopping at DG1 makes you wonder exactly what the consequences were for the Glasgow School of Art. The report indicates that the attention that elected members will be fully appraised of the progress through regular reporting to full council until the actions are complete. Lorna, Colin Grant and colleagues are here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. So can I invite any questions on the report or comments? Councillor Hislop and Councillor Wilson.
Chair, it's with regard to 3.3, the update and establishment. Now, this has nothing to do with who's been named in the executive group. How do we know that those are the right people and that the right skill sets have been identified? Because during the process of building DG1, we were told the right people were there and the right people had done all the work, and we ended up with a pig in a poke. So how do we know those are the right people that we have identified?
Lorna?
Thank you, Leader. In terms of the core council membership that's been established, we have looked towards the professional staff who lead on these matters within the council already, appointed through council processes. We have chartered surveyors, quantity surveyor, the head of planning who leads across Scotland in some of these matters. We do recognise that at times we will have to bring in other expertise, and within the plan we've indicated that on building standards we will have to go out and seek peer support and input towards addressing those recommendations. We've also identified in terms of certain aspects of design and build recommendations that the inquiry panel made, that we will engage through our council processes, architects who we already work with and who are employed by the council to work on that. There's a subgroup that I've indicated at 3.34, which is a wider group. So there's a number of engineers and other staff from other disciplines on that group. So we will be bringing in the widest possible resource, but this was to allow progress to be made rapidly for this meeting in terms of that executive group.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Lisa. I know that you had mentioned sort of the Glasgow School of Art and very terrible fire, but I think there certainly is an indication that actually throughout the industry we've seen in Edinburgh schools and DG1 and possibly in Edinburgh in the Glasgow School of Art that there is significant problems there. I think that some of those need legislative change, and I just wondered what communication has there been between the council and other agencies such as the Scottish Government and UK Government as to the fact that we have this report here. It has some very awful findings, but there does need to be changes. Unfortunately, they can't all be made by this council, so what communication has there been with those organisations?
Rona.
Just to give you a little bit of information on that, of course, the Chief Executive sent our inquiry report to the Scottish Government, but in addition, Professor Cole has been asked to meet with a minister in the Scottish Government, apologies, I don't know which one, about the report to go through the recommendations that may need national effort and action.
Indeed, a number of the recommendations that the kind of section 10 that Professor Cole presented was about learning from construction problems experienced in the DG1 building, and they related to national cognizance of those issues and the actions planned around that. Now that we went through that, and members have mentioned other difficulties in Glasgow recently, we have set out the actions planned there to write to the Minister for Local Government and Housing, to the COSLA President, to the Chief Executive of the Scottish Futures Trust, in terms of the recommendations made and also their action around it. Members will recall that Scottish Government took a lead role in responding to the schools inquiry and the actions to be taken there, and are also having taken action around housing issues on the back of the tragedy at Grenfell. So we will feed into that and provide this information to them and ask for their guidance on how they want to proceed.
Thank you. I should also add that a copy was also provided to the police, and I've had an acknowledgement from the police that they are going through the report with the idea to see whether there's anything that needs to can be investigated under criminal proceedings. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Leader. I suppose when I read this report, as I was reflecting through, because we've been through this for quite a while now, we've got a good understanding in regards to the recommendations that we come forward with. It's almost £7,500 for every recommendation is what it's cost us. So how do we get our money back? I suppose, well, in one life saved is our money back. You could look at it quite simply in easy terms, but it's something that went through my mind. How do we actually get value for money in regards to that? I mentioned that previously as well. So that's just a kind of open question, Leader. Maybe you could respond to that. But in page 190, also talks about the design team, the last bullet point, and that needs to be that core element needs to be there. It needs to be fit for purpose, so on and so forth. Any idea what that's got to look like as it goes forward? Have we got a view in regards to that? I don't think there's much information there. And how much will that actually cost in order to try and protect us as we go forward? £109, sorry. £109, sorry, I really apologise for that. It's the last bullet point, it's 6.3. It's recommended, Railways catching up, that the Council review its approach to the establishment of fee levels so that, while it should continue to ensure that it's getting value for money, it should also ensure that the design team are adequately resourced to provide the level and quantum of service expected by the Council and that the project requires. I think that's important, but it's the information behind it. What does it mean? I would look to charge much more to resource that team, how much it costs. I think it is important. We do have a good team, but obviously adequate that covers. We're also talking about cross-council working as well in regards to that, so maybe there's opportunities there. Just that interested me, Leader.
In terms of 6.3, my understanding in terms of the recommendation flows from challenges around the role of the design team at the early stages of the closure of the building, how they were commissioned, the fees that were attracted to those roles and the scope of those roles. That's quite a fundamental issue in terms of future projects, about how we establish a professional team, the extent to which we use external organisations and professionals within that, and making sure that the Council recognises and costs and fully funds any professional fees and understands the cost and the roles of those professionals within the design team. So there's a huge bit of work that we need to do within the piece of work around the programme for the team that needs to be within the Council, but also in terms of that relationship with external providers. And certainly members have received information in terms of the DG1 updates about the management and commissioning of roles within the design team as it's reconstructed. So it relates wholly to that, and we recognise there's a big bit of work to be done there.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. And before I sort of ask my question on here, I just wanted to make the point that actually when looking at the council membership of the team here, it actually highlights to me how much work we're asking all our officers to do across such a varied task. And actually, I just want to give my thanks, because obviously, we're asking officers to do an awful lot more with a lot less resources, and this is right the way through the council, from the top right down to the bottom. So I just wanted to make that point and to thank the officers for their hard work. In terms of the recommendations, on page 87, recommendation 8, there are mentions ensuring that appropriate funding and quality and maintenance of council projects. However, in the actual body of the text and on page 114, it refers to council buildings. I would just wonder whether we need to extend that to council projects, because with new flood defence schemes coming on, I feel it's important that we look at the maintenance of all the projects, not just the physical buildings, and whether there might be a change of wording that we can look at in there. It was just to put that suggestion forward.
I'm happy to add that into the plan and reflect that. I think probably what we would do is reflect on the building side, but obviously work with the engineering team and the team in infrastructure to make sure that they work with us on how that would impact on their approach as well.
Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Leader. I think what we're really just needing here is assurances that we're doing things differently and better than we did before. And what I would really, I noticed that, at 336, you're going to use individuals of national standing and expertise. 346, resource expert and suitably experienced and qualified project management. And at 347, the approach proposed in the plan, the engagement of peer support and external review. That sounds great, but who and why will those people, what will trigger somebody to come in and who's independent of everything and just say, yeah, this is a good project, you're doing well? Because we didn't have that the last time, or if we did, it wasn't done properly. And I would just like to know who the actual lead officer for the council is that will say, right, I think it's time we just have somebody in here that can check all the bits and bobs are together and everything's working and there's no gaps like there were. And because it's all written down, but I just don't know how it's going to be implemented. And I think we need to have that fallback safety net that somebody can go in and just check it over.
In terms of the kind of first point about the practice, we have suitably qualified, experienced people within the council, and we'll bring them across the council. There's a number of staff deliver successful projects, there's a number of things that happen, but we'll look for gaps if we feel that, one, we need reassurance around something or we don't have the answer internally. I think one of the things from the inquiry is about making sure we make best use of our own resources and our own understanding. And the review related to 20 years of council decision making and not just the last 3 to 4 years. So there's things have changed since then. In terms of the 3.4.7, in terms of peer support, that relates particularly to building standards. And that has a very particular role. It's in the press with GSA just now. It's in the press with Grenfell. We need to give support to our local team, but also to make sure that we bring to bear any lessons learned and anything we need to do around that team and support, and bring forward recommendations to members if that's appropriate. In terms of who's the lead officer, fundamentally that's one of the issues that the inquiry raised, is that we have a team to deliver our schools, we have a team to deliver our non-schools buildings. When we work with external partners who co-fund, Coupbury Art Gallery is a close example of that. We work with others, and therefore there are rules that we work with the funding agents for them. And what we really need is one team who work for the council and engage with these projects and make sure we get best value out of that resource, but also make sure it's fully resourced and equipped to give us the right answers and the support for member decision making. And we have that. We've had a really successful schools programme. Coupbury is clearly a good project that's been delivered. So we need to build on that expertise, but we need to capitalise and bring it together, and that's fundamentally the recommendation that the inquiry panel has made. So we don't have an answer to your question. There are a number of people in that answer just now, but we need to look towards a lead officer and a lead team for the whole council.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I will go to the recommendations. And are we happy to note 2.1 and 2.2? And I think we have considered the proposed plan and asked questions upon it. And also to note, as agreed previously, that they will be provided with information on progress. I'm content with that? Great. Okay, we move on to item 9, which is modernising the council, transformation proposals. This report presents to elected members the transformation programme proposals 2018 to 22, based on the budget themes agreed at full council on 27th of February. Since 2010-11, the council has delivered savings of 95 million through a combination of efficiency savings and service reviews. During this period, the council has continued to provide high-quality service across dispersed rural communities to an ageing population. That's just a scale of the challenges that have faced the council over the years. The council recently agreed a financial strategy, and the funding gap for the period covering 2019 to 2021 is estimated at 30 million. That's on top of that 95 million. To address this gap, elected members have agreed to the modernisation of the council, the establishment of the transformation board, and the identification of savings options and income generation to the value of £40 million. Appendix 2 to the report sets out the proposals which set the scene for a fundamental review, which will see a very different council emerge in the future. We are clear that we cannot do this in isolation, but need to engage our employees, partners and communities in this work to effect a cultural change and to efficiently align the programme with budget development timelines and over the term of the council. We have made a good start, and the recent community conversations held at ward level have provided a good foundation of engagement from which to build. Alongside this, the council has agreed community participation and engagement strategy, which will provide the framework for stakeholder involvement. The new transformation board had the opportunity at its first meeting to consider these proposals, and feedback on community engagement, alignment with the budget process and cultural change were highlighted in the discussions. Directors are here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. Can I thank those members who have come forward to serve on the Transformation Board and for their attendance at the last meeting. Questions? Archie, Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, Chair. And you know, being a national chair for APSI this year, we're not the only council with financial issues, and transformation is going on right across the United Kingdom. And obviously there's a lot of research done by the organisation that I chair at the moment about looking forward for local councils, and things about commercialisation is one of those particular areas where we can bring funding in. We can help SMEs as being part of that organisation which delivers any project that we can actually apply for. So I'm just wondering, you know, I know what the trading arm of the council is actually doing. I'm just wondering if there's any other of the directorships actually looking at commercialisation to try and bring funding into the council with some of the work that we actually do. I think it's important that we as an organisation look to other councils to see what they've learnt from that. Not just across Scotland, but across the UK as well. And I think we're actually doing some of the work that other councils have been given awards for. We've actually been doing this for quite a while, and we need our council, again, like I said before, to start advertising what we're actually doing well, and that could be part of the award scheme. But the commercialisation of unitary authorities and other areas in England, for instance, we have found that there is one particular council which is now fully funded through its commercialisation route, as opposed to getting central funding. So I don't think we'll ever get to that area in Scotland. However, I think we need to be in a position where we can get best value from our commercialisation organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Drybrook. We actually had the Chief Executive of the Council, I think, is it Colchester, I think, who came along for a day and spent time with us in late October. All the senior managers, quite a challenging session with us. Those ideas have fed into the transformation programme that has been developed, and we have a stream of work that's solely about generation of income and opportunities and commercial opportunities. So take that very seriously, and it was beyond the usual suspects of trading organisations within the council. It was about the whole organisation looking at opportunities there. So we're very much switched on to that, and we need to capitalise on what we can see through organisations like APSI, but also some of the things that were brought to that training and we're aware of. So essentially that's a core part of this.
Councillor Crothers?
Thank you, Leader. I think certainly, I mean, no great criticism in regards to the report. I think it's a way forward. We missed out on a chance last year in regards to take this type of approach, but we've caught up this year. So we're up to speed, I would say. We should begin taking the bottom-up approach and being inclusive. So I wouldn't mind, the page 165, it refers to the methodology and timetable. Just wonder maybe you could expand on that a wee bit in regards to how you see that going forward. And when it comes to the agreement, agreeing the recommendations, consideration for yourself, let's take a succession planning. If for some reason in 2023, when new council comes in next time, they're in a similar position, save them avoiding skipping that year, we didn't actually consult with the public in regards to the budget process. Maybe we should just extend that for a year and they can make that decision and change that if they want at that time. But I think it's important that we future-proof the council decision making in regards to consulting with the public and take the public with us.
I would imagine that any future council would have to participate in community engagement because that's very much the way forward. But maybe Lorna can say a bit more about the time.
I'll pick up the time frame. I think the intention is that it runs into the new council, so the new council can pick up the legacy of this council. So we'll take that on board, and that was the intention, but if it's not clear, then we certainly would ensure that's the case. I think Derek would answer on the engagement side.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Fully endorse the approach. What we're clear about is that we need to take consultation seriously. Full Council's leading the way in terms of the consultation mandate. What we're very keen at this stage is to have more feedback from members. If you have any other ideas on how we should approach that consultation and engagement, we'll work with you. The clear time frame is to therefore bring these proposals to you in September. We'll then get your views on these, and then it'll be a comprehensive engagement process, which will be, as Councillor Killers indicates, inclusive by its very nature from September to December. So I think we're very much on firm foundations, and more than happy to take any other further questions, Leader.
I just wondered if you wanted to say a little bit about the consultation mandate, and some of that came out of the training that officers and some members attended.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, very much so. We had a very informative members briefing recently, which we'll look to continue again for those members that weren't able to be there. There was a lot of other events happening at that time, so we're very keen to ensure we broaden that out to give that opportunity to other members. I think what we recognised was that the methodologies need to be far more innovative. We recognise that, yes, traditional public meeting has its place still. However, there are many other ways that we can involve and engage people, and you've referred in your opening remarks to the community conversations that we've been having at a ward level, and that's certainly something that we're very keen to do. But we're also very keen to ensure that those people who may have a vested interest in terms of protecting services, those who are in most need, those who are vulnerable, are particularly targeted, and that's why ensuring that approach will involve our equalities groups and our tackling poverty reference group will be quite important to ensure that therefore any potential implications for those most in need, those most vulnerable people, will be taken into account through a methodology that is far more inclusive than the traditional public meeting. It will be targeted at very precise individuals and groups and held in times and in places that suit people, but will also build on the opportunity that social media presents in terms of seeking views and opinions. So a lot of that to be developed over the next few weeks for a comprehensive report to come back in September.
Councillor Crothers?
I know, thanks very much. Comprehensive answer. But I just wonder, Derek, in regards to, and through you, Leader, conversation was had earlier in regards to what Councillor Wood brought up, involving the private sector, business sector, so on and so forth. It's not exclusive within here, but if we're looking at bringing forward delivering services, either at an equal level, in a better way, actually, or a cheaper way, you could say, providing those services, every bit as efficient. I think that's certainly, we should be talking to the business sector as well as just the normal kind of usual people that we speak to.
Well, I think the intention would be to talk to all stakeholders.
Reaffirm, Leader, yes, indeed it will be to engage all stakeholders, including key resource we've identified earlier as our own staff. And on that basis, the options that we're developing just now for consideration in September will indeed
look at the alternative methods of delivery, which could include commissioning, outsourcing, etc. These are all ruled in at this stage, and it will be for members to consider these in September.
Okay. Councillor James.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm concerned about proportionality and the representation on the board. I'm looking here, and I believe the Labour Party have 3 members on the board. Then there are the independents who slavishly support Labour but are elected. But then there's 2 union representatives, and they're affiliated to Labour. So could I ask the Chair, I don't think he's present, or the Vice Chair, what he's doing to mitigate this unhealthy overrepresentation of the Labour Party on the board?
Councillor Davidson, do you wish to respond to that?
No.
So the union representatives are there to represent the workforce, irrespective of the political views of any of the workforce. They represent all members of the union, whether they're SNP voters, Labour voters, Tory voters. They're there to represent the workforce, not to represent the Labour Party. Can we move to the recommendations? Yep. Okay, so we've reviewed and agreed the transformation programme. Okay. And are we content to agree the consultation and authorisation mandate? Okay. Okay, item 10 is the update on DG1. This report provides an update for members on actions taken since the full council meeting on the 29th of March 2018 in relation to the costs of completing the remedial and improvement works to bring the facility back into safe operation. The report also confirms that ongoing and diligent and robust cost management has meant there has been no need to access the agreed construction works contingency. The report responds to Professor Cole's observation on the expectations of the look and feel of the reopened building, and also the opportunity to repurpose aspects of this facility following the NHS decision not to take up space, which is disappointing but does present other opportunities. The report also provides an update on the programme and timeline to the completion of the project. Colin Grant, Frank Hurley and Lee Seaton are here to respond to any questions members may have in the report, so I can invite questions. Or comment? Councillor Maitland, Councillor Maitland first.
The update. Really, I think I'm probably going straight to the suggestions about the designs, Peter, in the front of the front of house external design proposals. We discussed this really quite carefully in the independent group, and notwithstanding what my colleagues have just suggested, actually we want to say to you we don't agree with you, I'm afraid. We feel that the use of these particular monies actually maybe is not the best way forward in this particular climate. We do think that it's extremely important to have a good lighting design and high quality leader of items outside the front door. We like to suggest that you should maintain the natural trees around about, and of course the importance of CCTV and natural surveillance of that particular area. And we're also concerned about the notion of removing a bus shelter. We're not sure where you're planning to put it, but it also ought to be very high quality and vandal resistant, but it should also be totally convenient in terms of the design outside the front of the building. So although we are, I think, perfectly happy with the idea of something good and clean and renewed, and we will go along with you with respect to the internal renovations, I'm afraid I would like to have something come back on the external renovations, please.
Just for clarification, I mean, these are not the proposals of the administration in terms of these designs. These designs have been put forward to us. Some of our members also have some concerns about certain aspects of whether or not the things on page 183, for example, are actually what we would have, or those are just designs. I'm not sure that any of us want to trip over a seal's head sticking out the pavement, for example. So can I suggest that if there's an agreement to do it, and I'm not going to prejudge what's going to be discussed just now, that actually some of the detail of this comes back to the group that we all sit on to have a little bit further discussion on? Because I think there are definitely items in there which we would have some concerns about. Can I hand over to Frank?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the designs that you're looking at, I mean, this is first pass. It's indicative of what could be achieved. I think the message that we're trying to get across there is that we will have an iconic building that does merit an iconic entrance, so that when people do arrive at the site, their expectation level increases. That is what we aspire to do. I'm happy to take on board comments from elected members and come back at next full council with more detailed design proposals. But it's the message to get across that we wish to do something to improve the front entrance area, to give an iconic entrance. I think we are keen on the archway concept, so we would build upon that. And in terms of trees and lighting and CTV, fine. It's a subjective debate, but I'm happy to have that discussion, have that input from elected members, and bring back more definitive proposals for the next full council meeting.
Thanks. Councillor Carruthers?
Thanks, Leader. We've got 2 or 3 issues just maybe to pick up on first in regards to the report and possibly future-proofing. So one of the questions that came up in our pre-discussions was, so once it's up and running now, say we're to invest this money, so and just a year or so from now, it's gone through the commissioning process and it's ready to open. It used to run at a £600,000 deficit. Any idea what that's going to look like with the current plans? So that's one question. Is that coming into surplus? Will it still be a deficit? So in regards to, I think, because obviously our design and plans need to actually future-proof that best we can to making it financially sustainable. Paragraph 5. We've been warned, I would say, that the governance assurance it's looking at, it's talking about the reduction in level from, I think it's 1.62 million or 1.1 million in regards to the contingency down to 419,000. I think that's a clear warning there. We have to consider that in regards to any decisions that we make here today. Value for money. I wonder if maybe, whether it's yourself, Colin or Frank, just it's Appendix 1. Which is on page 87, I'll kind of start there. I've kind of argued that right through when we took a single contractor, could we actually achieve value for money? So I'll just ask a question to get clarification first before I make any particular statements round about that. So let me see, as we're looking at top of the page 187, it talks about the down takings. So at first they're taking down 6 number trees at £150 each. Then it goes and remove the existing grills at £50 each. 6 of remove the existing shelter cycle stands, blah blah blah. So it kind of talks about that there. So we're taking 6 away, and I think from what I can gather, we're replacing it with 3. So this is points of clarity, and this is how it reads anyways when I read it. So if you go over the page to page 188, you kind of see the where it replaces that. So about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way down, it talks about trees, future trees, and it talks about 3 at £450 each to replace that. Then it talks about the tree pit and the drainage cells, which is, I would imagine, a degree of gravel at the bottom of the pit when it's dug to plant. That's 3 number, that's £1,700 each to do that. Tree grills will sell, so the removal was 150, now it's £600 each. And above that, so if how it reads when you're looking at it, we're taking away 6 trees at a cost, which is reasonably expensive, replacing it with another 3 trees, and then you look at it, and it looks like above that when you see let me see, it refers to WP soft landscaping allowance. So to import topsoil, subsoil for the new tree pits, talks about 45 cubic metres. To put that into context, that's nearly 3 Arctic loads of topsoil for 3 trees. It looks over the top, doesn't read well. It's I'm maybe completely wrong, but on the face of it, you think, are we getting value for money? Probably no. If they're true and factual, we're probably not. So there's 3 points there in particular I think we should consider. Maybe a clarification if that's correct, or do I misunderstand or misreading that? That last point, certainly, but the first 2 points as well, Leader.
So you're seeking clarification on the analysis of risk in section 5, and then specific issues in regard to value for money.
Thanks, Leader. If I could just pick up the first point around the 600,000, the running costs. The clear intention in some of the redesign within the building is to make it more operationally friendly for those users, but also to make it easier to run in terms of the staff that we need. So we're actually anticipating, I can come back with a further figure in due course, but we're certainly anticipating a more efficient running of the building in terms of the staff that we would need. Okay.
Chair, if I could add to that and maybe respond to the other issues as well. There should be significant savings annually in terms of the running costs of the building, in terms of energy costs. I have referenced to full council in previous meetings, the amount of leakage from the 3 pools, from the tanks, in terms of thousands and thousands of gallons of water that we had to pay for and we had to heat. That now has all been remedied. We're putting in LED light fittings. So there should be a significant saving in respect of the running costs and energy savings. In terms of the reference to the remaining contingency, the £419,000, that is a minimum figure at this moment in time. Work is underway, agreeing various other variations, other instructions with the contractor, and that should generate further contingency monies that will add to the 419. I think maybe in terms of future reports that I expand on how I report the contingency, because from course report 16 to what's currently reported here, course report 17, there's been a £40,000 movement downwards, as you would expect, with the instructions being issued for new work. But the quantum of instructions issued, the aggregate quantum in that monthly period, probably between £200,000 and £300,000 worth of an increase, and yet the reduction in contingency level is only £40,000. So that shows the work that we're doing in terms of realising monies from the other packages of funding. And finally, and this is an important thing that I possibly should have updated at the start, in terms of programme, which we reference in paragraphs 4.2 through to 4.10, we reference that we are on target for our completion date of the 12th of August next year. For a number of months now, it has been apparent that there is a good opportunity to deliver an earlier completion date. That is just about reaching fruition. We should have a revised target programme from our contractor by the end of this week that will indicate an earlier completion date. So that's earlier than the current completion date of the 12th of August 2019. And that earlier completion date, we hope, will capture all or a very large part of the school summer holidays in 2019. I think it's also worth reminding full council that the completion date of 12th of August 2019 was 10 weeks earlier than the original completion date. So we've already banked a saving of 10 weeks in terms of earlier completion, and we're on the cusp of taking a further chunk of time off that programme, the aspiration being to capture as much or all of the school summer holiday period that we can. The thirdly, and it's linked back because time is linked to cost, in terms of the earlier completion date, there will be a resultant saving from that, and that again will underpin the current contingency level that we are reporting.
Councillor Carruthers?
There was a third question. There's no criticism in regards to the way the project's coming forward and such like. We're just emphasising this particular point. We've argued this all the time, so we're not going to stop. I was spending our money well, but there's a third point in particular in regards to the appendix. Just clarification in regards to that, please. I've made that point already.
The appendix, Chair, or the cost that elected members referring to is a notional cost. It's a high-level cost that's been prepared by a partner within Gardner Theobald, who are a national, indeed international cost consultant. It is a high-level cost at this point in time. It doesn't detail what ultimately we will pay for a tree or a tonne of topsoil. It's a high-level cost that gives elected members a flavour of the quantum that we will have to spend in that area to achieve what I would describe as an iconic entrance. It's no more than that. Once we do have the detail in terms of what the contractors' costs are, I'm more than happy to share that with full council.
No, thanks for that update, but I think there's a lot of ambiguity around about whether how much importance we'll actually put on the recommendation from Professor Cole in regards to this new grand entrance. I've certainly got concerns over that. An extra over £1 million we've spent on what potentially be, again, that's a lot of money to the council, the wider taxpayer, for something.
Well,
And
yeah,
it also refers to the grand opening as well within there. We've probably had that. I don't know if it actually deserves another grand opening, this actual, when it comes to that point. We need to consider that, Leader.
Well, I think the total is not just for the external, it's also the work on the first and second floors as well. So it's not just about making a fancy entrance. And as far as the grand opening is, I'm not quite sure. I think that was maybe just a bit of a slip in the pen, because I don't know that anybody's thinking of a grand opening particularly. Obviously, however, we would want to advertise the fact that we've got the building and that it's available for national and international competition and for visitors to come to and for residents to come to. So, Councillor Davidson and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Leader. And I think it's fair to reflect, and I note what Professor Cole said, and I think that it does need to be given some due weight. Also worth bearing in mind that the areas in question are currently a building site, obviously. It's a very clean, well-managed building site, but it is a building site nevertheless. There's every risk if you don't do anything to them that actually they end up being somewhat tired and tatty and looking like they've just been kind of reconstituted and cleaned up after having been a building site. There is something to be said for giving Professor Cole's suggestion due weight. I think it is worth considering. We've heard about the management and the management of the contingency, the way that that's been done. I have a lot of confidence in that. I've got a lot of confidence in that because, let's face it, everything that we have been advised would be done in terms of financial management since the decision was taken, and I recognise it was by no means unanimous, has been done in exactly the way we were promised it would be. I recognise that there has been a real problem with the failures of previous professional advice at various points in the lengthy history of the unhappy project. That has certainly not been the case so far as the reconstruction has been concerned, anything but. And so while we must give due weight to Mr. Garrett's input into the report, I also have to balance that with the fact that, as I say, everything that has been promised us in terms of the financial management and the oversight of the work has been delivered exactly as it was promised to us. I have no reason to believe that that will change where this is concerned. The original plan, and as I say, I recognise it was not unanimous by any manner of means, was to deliver the building we should have had in the first place. I regard this or a version of it, and I have a question at the end of this, but this or a version of it as being the final part of that work, and one which will be contained within the overall money that we set aside in order to deliver the entire project. We're getting more than we bargained for. I think that there is every risk, were we not to do this, or a version of it, that we'll get to an opening, perhaps not a grand opening, but an opening nevertheless, and rather regret that perhaps we didn't venture the bit extra to actually get what we set out, albeit not unanimously, to do in the first place, which was to deliver the building that we should have had when it was a grand opening back in the day. My question is, I note that there are some concerns and differences of opinion about which elements of the exterior work ought to be included. Concerns about a seal's head. I actually didn't realise it was a seal's head until someone else explained to me that that's what it was. But noting that, and that it might be possible to bring some of that back for consideration, would that have any impact on the management of both in terms, I guess, of finance and programme and work? Does that coming back to full council for consideration cause you any difficulty?
Chair, the driver here in terms of a decision at this forum, I think the key area is in terms of critical path is the wellbeing centre. We have, we will, subject to getting agreement from full council, we will have to really immediately engage with our design team and with stakeholders to get this piece of work moving forward. That is the key driver. What we're doing externally is less critical in terms of programme. Some of the images that are contained within the document, again, I stress, are indicative. They're standard landscaping designs or elements or artwork that you could see anywhere around the country. happy to bring back, more definitive proposals in respect to that. But if we are to do, for example, the wellbeing centre, and to manage the finances of the job in its entirety moving forward, this is the time to make the decision. If we don't do it now and we wait to September, we're going to miss the boat, or it's going to impact on our earlier completion date. So that is the important thing.
I'm also correct, it could impact on cost, negatively impact on cost if we delay the decision.
It will impact on cost because cost is related to time, Chair.
Councillor Bell, followed by Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Thanks, Leader. Frank just mentioned, obviously, I was looking at the house front external design proposals, and obviously you said it was a high-end cost, and I'm quite glad to hear it is a high-end cost. To remove a bench for £500 is pretty expensive. A 4-in-1 bucket with a JCB would do it in about 30 seconds. But looking at also as well, break out and remove existing paving was an expensive cost. Someone at Tarmac Adam company and the building company would see this, I think it was overinflated. But what concerns me is I think a lot of these prices are overinflated, and we need to get them. We need to get value for money, because we're throwing enough money at this white elephant. And what concerns me, I know it sounds bad, but £323,000, £799. It's a lot of money for this cosmetic look. So it has to be right, and hopefully get these prices back and get them down.
Chair, I concur with everything the elected member said.
We've spent millions on this. I don't believe.
Mr. Crilly has a proven track record of being able to drive prices down, and I'm sure he will continue to.
So have I, as a business.
I could give Councillor Dougie Campbell, followed by Councillor Richard Brodie.
Thank you, Leader. I have a couple of questions to ask. But first of all, I think the news about the early opening is hugely welcome, and I think Frank should be congratulated by all members in terms of his stewardship of the on-site operations. First question, everybody will be mindful of the fire at the Glasgow School of Art. And my first question is to Frank. Are you confident that we have adequate fire safety measures in place on site, and that the site is secure? And my second question, perhaps this will be directed towards Lorna, but I think the proposals for the Occupational Health and Wellbeing Centre of Excellence is excellent, and I want to congratulate the senior leadership team for their vision in developing this particular proposal. Coming from a background that I do in the police service, where there's a huge investment in the health and wellbeing of the workforce, I think it's a great step forward for Dumfries and Galloway Council, particularly in relation to rehabilitation from work-related injuries, and also a focus on mental health. So I think that's hugely welcome. But my question around that particular area is the proposals for how the space not being occupied by the NHS look very encouraging. But have we looked forward in terms of the resourcing of these spaces, bearing in mind, as we now know, that there's going to be an earlier opening date for DG1? Thank you.
Chair, if I could respond to the first three questions, and then in respect to the fourth, the Wellbeing Centre, I'll pass that to my colleague Lee. Firstly, in terms of the fire integrity, fire issues around the building, it was very clear to us early on that this was an issue. It was identified early. That being the case, we employed a fire consultant who came down and surveyed the building and gave us numerous proposals as to how we make good the shortfalls that were very evidently in place. That has led us to spend significant sums, hundreds of thousands of pounds, fire stopping around the building, whether it be bison slabs, steel frames, fire curtains, all around the building, all fire stopping measures that should have been in place that weren't in place. So there's been a comprehensive review of what we didn't have, and we now have that. There's still a number of fire guys there on site who are finalising the stopping of steelwork. In terms of the regime that prevails on the site just now, there are a number of fire alarms around the building site today. Every fortnight we have a fire drill, and the response to that drill is timed and records are kept of that. So I think from the alarm going off to everyone assembling in the designated assembly point is something like 2 minutes, and it's taken very seriously. It's not flippant. People are expected to respond, in a professional manner. So I'm happy that if there was an issue in terms of, hot working, a spark, starting a fire or anything like that, that we've got a management regime in place whereby we wouldn't suffer anything like the consequences that we've recently all seen on the television from Glasgow Art School. If I can now pass to Lee, who will give some advice in terms of the Wellbeing Centre.
Thank you, Frank. A couple of points to pick up on, just in relation to the staffing reference and the earlier question. Just useful to point out, because it's got a context for the Wellbeing Centre and amongst the whole building. I know my colleagues responsible for management of the facility are finalising the draft business plan, which they do aim to bring back to full council later in this calendar year, and that will include obviously the full operation costs of the facility, but refer to the Wellbeing Centre as well. In terms of the vision for the Wellbeing Centre, we just so members are clear, within the first floor, the fitness suite as you knew it will remain within the square meterage that it's in and will continue to operate as a fitness suite. The remaining space on that first floor, which members may recall being the former bar area where the health suite was also and where a number of treatment rooms were, that is essentially the space that is looking to be configured to form the wellbeing area. We are seeking to develop our own physical activity pathway for Dumfries and Galloway. There is an NHS Health Scotland model for what a physical activity pathway should look like. We have an exercise referral scheme in operation in a limited fashion within Dumfries and Galloway currently, where we have a number of GP practices or other health providers who on a limited basis are doing exercise prescriptions. We're very much looking to extend and revamp that scheme as part of that, first and foremost. We've established an exercise referral review group where we have NHS representation and we have council representation on that. But importantly, what we're looking to adopt is a social prescribing model. This has been picked up at a number of area committees I've been at with the recent performance reporting. We have made contact with 2 other local authorities currently. We have examples within our public health colleagues where social prescribing is happening, and by that is taking the exercise referral from a GP a step further, whereby it can be through a mental health charity, it could be any allied health professional that can signpost the member of the community in front of them to a series of prescribed reduced cost activities, or indeed free third sector delivered activities, quite often with a buddy as such. So there is a series of meetings that we have over the summer with our public health colleagues, third sector colleagues, to investigate actually what that would look like. We have met already with our council of recently appointed new occupational health providers. We are very keen, as are they, that they have a presence within the Wellbeing Centre in terms of the support they offer to our staff, in terms of our occupational health referrals, and the range and extent that can grow into physiotherapy, into counselling and such like, and having activities happening within there, and very much seeing as part of our physical activity pathway that currently there is no mechanism for anyone going for occupational health referrals within our council to be signposted into a support through physical activity in some way, shape or form, when this presents us with a significant opportunity. Indeed, I've also got some planned time with the locality staff in terms of the Health and Social Care Partnership and the opportunities we can have for people with long-term conditions that could benefit from activity on site. So I'm very happy as part of future reports to come back and provide update to members on where we are with the development of the wellbeing theme within the first floor.
Councillor Brodie, followed by Councillor Hatton.
Thanks, Leader. I totally get it that after spending all these millions of pounds that we want something really high quality to offer the public. That's obviously, as long as we don't over-egg the pudding, just because there is all these hundreds of thousands of pounds in contingency doesn't mean we have to spend it, because there are projects outside Dumfries that could do with an injection of capital. On the health and well-being issue, I think it is a really good development. But it's really very disappointing that the health board aren't going to support it. So perhaps, Leader, you could write to them and ask them if they'll reconsider that, because they should be at the forefront of this as well, working with Dumfries and Galloway Council. Also, I don't know if we've looked at external investment in the Health and Wellbeing Centre from health charities. It may be difficult to fit it in with the opening, but I think it doesn't mean that it has to be all up singing and dancing by the middle of next year. But perhaps it could be developed further with external funds. So perhaps we could look at that. Just one suggestion on the internal design, because I've had some experience of design of public-facing thing in public buildings. If you're going to screen off the office buildings, perhaps you could screen them with high quality graphics, which maybe displays sporting figures. And if we did that, then there could be maybe say we don't need a sculpture of sporting figures there, which would save several £1,000s. So that's something you maybe think about when you're making your final designs.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. I think it wasn't so much that the NHS doesn't support the Wellbeing Centre. They'd looked around their assets. We thought that they actually maybe wanted to move some aspects of their activities into into DG1, and they considered their assets and then felt that they weren't going to take us up on that possibility. I don't think it's that they don't support the Wellbeing Centre in any way. Any further comments?
Leader, just on whether we've tried to get external investment in the Health and Wellbeing Centre, because there would be charities that could support it.
I think that we'd certainly be looking to be working with other third sector organisations. Yes.
Yes, very much, Chair. And part of our discussions with the other local authorities and leisure trusts is not to reinvent the wheel, and we're getting information on how they have sourced and provided staff resources into their centres.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman, followed by Councillor Young.
Thank you, Leader. Many of the points I wanted to raise have already been covered, and there's just a couple of suggestions, really. Certainly, in terms of the recommendations at 2.5, I would welcome that we get further detail coming back. So, although we may agree that we need new design proposals, it would be useful to get them coming back. Certainly, looking at some of the pictures, there does appear to be exceedingly healthy trees in exactly the same spot that you're proposing to put them down and put them back up. And certainly, as a horticulturist, as a professional gardener, this is something that I would not normally recommend from a professional point of view. In terms of moving forward, I was just wondering, the Health and Wellbeing Centre is hugely welcomed, but there's been no mention in terms of the fact that we're trying to create a food growing network. And I'm aware that there is a group in Dumfries, Incredible Edibles Dumfries, and whether we can make contact with them to see whether there's any options to build relationships with them. I'm taking this on the back of the fantastic work that Incredible Edibles in Stranraer have been done, and they're transforming Stranraer at the moment by taking forward, and this could link in with our food growing strategy for the council. So it was just really to put that forward as a potential suggestion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to follow up and make contact with the organisation who I'm not yet familiar with, so happy to do so.
And we'll bear in mind your professional advice regarding the trees when we look at the trees. Okay, Councillor Young, followed by Councillor Heslop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The proposed parking is using the existing 2-hour disc system. I think a family with young children going swimming and then perhaps going for a meal afterwards, I think that's a very tight timeline, and the last thing you want to do when you go to for a relaxing swim and meal is have concerns about the time. And I see that you are not considering, quite rightly in my opinion, a barrier system, but perhaps a 4-hour disc system should be used rather than a 2-hour. And it's my personal opinion that it should be a 4-hour disc system for the whole of the town to allow the shops to flourish without the threat of a parking ticket.
Comment on the time of the 2-hour disc system.
Chair, we're happy to reflect on that and report back to full council. I think again we're just indicating that there won't be a barrier and traffic lights in terms of access and egress to the site for car parking, and that we need to come up with a competent scheme, regime for car parking. But happy to raise that with my colleagues who are leading on car parking.
Thank you. Councillor Hislop, followed by Councillor Wilson.
I think we're getting back to the sort of 1.1 million for the indicative costs. Now, I think that does sort of raise concerns. I would call this a sort of gas quote, because gas, as you know, is a substance that fills the space that it's allowed to. We've got 1.1 million, and here we have a costed, not fully costed, but high level cost. Where do we actually see this coming in at? Because there must be some idea that is it going to be 75% of that, or are we looking at 55% of that? I would like to think 50% would be where Mr. Crilly starts the negotiations if he can't get it lower than that.
It's certainly not going to be any more than 1.1 million, and hopefully less. Frank.
Chair, I know the comment from the elected member. Just to be fulsome in terms of the areas that we were looking to update, we obviously have got the front of house externally. We've commented on that today. We've also got the proposals for the wellbeing centre, but we also did have quite, good and well-defined designs for the entrance lobby feature that were significantly higher than what's been reported today. So rather than filling any space, we're actually working the other way, because at one stage, in terms of dealing with the 3 spaces, the aggregate spend for that was looking at 1.8 million. So rather than filling space, we're working back the way, and we're saying that we're going to, deliver, significant change in terms of front of house externally. We're going to deliver the wellbeing centre, and what monies are left, the residual monies that are left from the already approved construction works contingency, will be spent internally in the lobby area and reception area, which is very tired, which is very poor, and which personally and the team in large would like to spend an awful lot more on. So we're squeezing the other way as opposed to, padding things out.
You might like to spend more, but you're not getting to spend more. Councillor Hislop.
Just to come back on that, we were told earlier by Mr. Crilly that this was high level and he expected it to be less than that. Now, that would suggest that there is movement in there and that we know that there is movement in there. So I'm not saying that you're padding it out. I'm just saying, what would we actually be looking for the parts that haven't been finally costed, the external? Are we looking at maybe another 10, 15, 20% off?
The way that the paper has been set out, Chair, what effectively we are saying to full council is, if you give approval for this, we will execute, quite serious design changes in the look in terms of front of house externally. We will deliver the wellbeing centre on the first floor as per the designs, and any residual monies remaining will be spent to try and update and enhance as best we can the front of house internal lobby and reception areas that are very poor. The monies that this paper would sign off, in my view, should be far greater for that space. But we are working within the financial parameters as prescribed by full council in September of last year.
And we will be bringing these back in future reports to council as well. And there will also be the opportunity for the group leaders to on our monthly updates to investigate some of these and to take further information from you. Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor James.
Thanks, Leader. I think, really, the spend that's talked about here, I think the principle behind it there is support for. I think maybe some of the specifics that are in there, as they stand at the moment, aren't particularly favourable. And I wonder if, going forward, I could put forward a proposal to agree in principle to the implementation of the proposals, but for future approval to be granted by the monthly leaders meeting. So that would be amending 2.5, 2.6 and 2.7 to agree in principle.
Leader, just for clarification, I think that works very well for 2.5 and 2.6, but I think Frank was making the point in terms of 2.7 that we need a firm decision today around the wellbeing centre, and on that one I don't think anyone was disagreeing. If we can move forward with 2.7, it won't impact on the programme. If that's okay.
I think that needs to be agreed today in order to be able to take advantage of the fact that workers are still on site and so on.
Apologies, that is my mistake. It should only be for 2.5 and 2.6 to agree in principle.
Okay, Councillor James, followed by Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dumfries is traditionally the home of the Seagull. Last time this building was open, it had running costs of several £100,000 deficit to our budget. If we unwisely opt to run it again, no doubt we'll incur the same cost and have a burden on the public going forward. So if that is to be the case, I would suggest that the seal be replaced by an albatross as a suitable emblem.
I assume that is intended as a witticism. Councillor Gilroy.
I do think it's quite funny. Just picking up on a couple of things, I think the Incredible Edibles is a really good idea for there. It can be very attractive and very useful, and it is a well-being and healthy place. It's a leisure centre after all. But I'm looking at car parking, and I would agree with Councillor Young that I don't think 2 hours is long enough. If you've got children, somebody is disabled, it takes a long time to get in and out of swimming pools, change, have a cup of coffee, whatever you want to do. So I think that is not a long enough time. However, what I do also think is that I don't know why you've dismissed a barrier system. Just because the last one didn't work doesn't mean to say another one wouldn't, because I think it's an opportunity here to charge. And you would only charge the people who parked their car but did not use the facility. And I think there will be people who will do that. And I think if you use the facility, you get your ticket back and you get out for free. I think that is absolutely right. But if some people who are working in town park their car there for 8 hours, they should pay for it. And I do think you should relook at how we make some money out of the car parking system at DG1. Because if you go there and you've got children and all the bits and bobs that go with it, and all the car parking's been taken up close to the frontage, which we're all spending a whole fortune on, but the people who are parking there are not using it, I don't think that's a good idea, and I think we're missing a trick. And I think it should be re-looked at. And just because one barrier doesn't work, I mean, we all use them at airports, at car parking that you pay for at railways, if you go to Carlisle, any of those things, it must be possible. And I think there should be a system whereby it can be differentiated between those who are using the facility and those who are using the car park.
Chair, I'm happy to share comments with my colleagues who are dealing with car parking. Again, it can be subjective and it can be emotive, and I think we will endeavour to bring back more wholesome proposals to full council in September.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, followed by Councillor Ferguson.
I suppose until we get to the recommendations, taking into consideration what Councillor Wilson said, it sounds like it might be a good way forward in regards to some of the issues that I had in regards to what would agree. The only thing is that if there was dispute amongst the group leaders, how would that be resolved? I think that's the only thing, but we'd get to that point. It's certainly a way forward. When it comes to, Lee was talking earlier in regards to how he's taking forward the wellbeing centre, I think the whole of DG1, have we included the business stroke private sector in regards to how we could potentially deliver this? I would like the reassurances. If not, we need to engage with them sooner rather than later in regards to going back to efficiency, savings, better ways of working, so on and so forth.
Thank you, Chair. Currently, the only private sector provider that we have engaged with is our occupational health provider, who's just recently won the contract. If there are opportunities with private sector providers that would fit within our overarching strategy, because ultimately a lot of the wellbeing activities will be prescribed at a very, very much subsidised cost in terms of our allied health professionals. But I'm very happy to have that discussion with potential private sector partners that could form part of a wider offering.
Leader,
I think there's an intentional.
Leader, could I just add to that in terms of the best value for money? Just again to reassure members that we've been quite careful about not simply reopening the same building. Okay, we're looking to repurpose it. It's not just going to be a leisure sport facility. We have looked at the wellbeing agenda, but in addition to that, we're looking at the top floor in terms of what other staff can move in there, whether people from Dumfries and Galloway can use that and come in and get services. And on that basis, that's also looking at the possibility of reduction of our estate across Dumfries so that some other council buildings can close. So we really are looking to sweat the building in terms of usage, in terms of other savings that can be made, and to make it run more efficiently.
I think there's also the potential for income generation in some of these as well. So. Councillor Ferguson, followed by Councillor Wood.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. One, I'm pleased to get some clarification that the NHS are actually going to be involved in the process. It's not going to be used as a base. I think if I've read Lee or heard Lee correctly. So that actually ticks one box for me. The second box, and I'm also pleased to see Frank's picking up on the car parking issue, because I would apply the same rule to that, Frank, as you would in planning. Don't put a condition on you can't enforce. So would we be looking at having an order so that Derek's team, the communities team, could actually issue parking tickets for somebody who didn't have? And I think that's a major change away, because that would be a real change for our major facilities. You know, when you look at the Keswick Centre, the Ryan Centre, any of these places. So I'm pleased to see you're taking cognizance of that, Frank, and bringing something back. But on a really positive note, nobody's touching it, and there's a real danger here. We're in the Grenfell situation where all we're talking about is finance. Right? I'm looking at the SHEC inspection report, which is hugely impressive. Right? So what we're showing here is we're putting safety before the cost. But you're also being really good at keeping the cost down. So in fairness, I think what I'm trying to say here, it's a huge well done, Frank, in terms of achieving consistent SHEC reports like this. And I think that needs to be noted and commended on.
Anything to add? Councillor Wood, followed by Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. I think the report's actually a very good report, and I welcome it. The only suggestion I would put forward, though, and that is to look at the defunct cinema that we now have. It's all very well doing up the front of the building and inside the building, but the experience of coming out of that building and to see that cinema with its brickwork and the rawness of it, I think is depressing. I think that you would have the opportunity of extra car parking as well. And I just wonder if there maybe shouldn't be some contact made with the owners of the cinema to see where we can work alongside of them to try and develop that area with what we're doing. Because we are spending a lot of money on DG1. It will be a fantastic facility once it's complete, but maybe we're just missing a trick here where there's an opportunity. I would just wonder if it's worth investigating how you could take that forward.
Chair, again, I'm happy to share that suggestion with colleagues. I know it has been referenced in discussions over the past 4 or 6 weeks. I'm more than happy to get an update on that and report back to full council in September.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman, followed by Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Leader. Back to cards, which I'm sure you're really pleased for me to bring up the subject once again. However, I'm just looking at the Scottish Government, and the Scottish Government are leading the way in terms of electric cars, and we're looking to future-proof a high-tech, low-carbon economy. There's lots of support out there, and certainly the Scottish Government are actually looking to encourage the public sector to lead the way in expansion of charging networks. Now, I'm aware that within EEI, the team have been looking to expand our network across the region, and I'm just wondering, have we taken advantage of the support that the Scottish Government is wanting to give us in ensuring that we have adequate charging facilities for electric vehicles within DG1?
Chair, I think I can report that at present we don't have any proposals for charging points on the site. I'm again happy to interrogate that a little bit. It would, I suspect, involve engagement with the planning department in terms of, the creation of a single or multiple charging points. I'm also happy to interrogate this further with colleagues from IEE to see if we can do something at a DG1 site. I acknowledge that as an important issue.
I think I would just say that we do have a team within DG Enterprise who are looking at that currently, and there is funding applications going in because there's money available from Scottish Government. As a government, we're looking, or as a country, we're looking to phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2032. And certainly, if we're looking to future-proof, I think it's absolutely crucial that we actually take this forward.
Thank you. Councillor John Campbell, followed by Councillor Little.
Thank you, Leader. I welcome recommendation 2.7 for the Wellbeing Centre. I'm looking at the plans on the first floor there. My question was really round about the disabled toilet. I may have missed it, maybe in the report somewhere, but is this going to be one of these changing places toilets?
Chair, we recently had an inquiry about changing places toilets from an elected member. There are two designated changing places toilets in the building. I don't believe this disabled toilet is one of them.
But there will be two changing places toilets actually in the building?
There are two designated changing places facilities within the building. I don't believe this is one of them. This is only crystallised in recent weeks with the demise of the NHS proposals. So we have other changing places toilets in the facility.
I'm delighted to hear that we've got two. That's excellent. That'll double the number we've got in Dumfries Town, or Dumfries and Galloway at the moment. So that's excellent news. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Leader. I'm going back a little bit back to the parking issue, and full agreement with Councillor Young about when you've got children and disabled or whatever, the amount of time it takes to get your children in and out the pool, dressed, something to eat and such like. And I welcome that Frank's going to come back with some other options to do with parking, but I wouldn't be happy to encourage paid parking in that area, because I think if you encourage all-day parking, you're going to end up with a car park full of people working there and paying all day, and people using the facilities will not be able to park at all. So I wouldn't be happy to encourage that as being part of the options, paid parking.
Okay,
if we have a like a longer disc, then you're only going to get probably at the tops 4-hour parking there, whereas option of all day parking could find it filled with workers rather than facility
Leader,
users.
we'll certainly look to ensure that the paper that comes back on parking gives options for members so that you can make the decision.
Councillor Hislop.
Chair, I think 4-hour parking would be a good idea, because that gives us 15 minutes to close the meeting and all the councillors could remove their cars from the thing without getting a ticket.
We'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, can we proceed to the recommendations, please? Okay, to proceed to the recommendations. Okay, 2.1 is for noting, 2.2 is for noting, 2.3, note 2.4, 2.5, we wanted to agree the principle, I think, of the front house external design and bring those back. That agreed. And again, 2.6, again, it was agreeing the principle of front house internal improvements, but again, to bring them back. And 2.8 I think, sorry, 2.7, we agree the implementation of the Wellbeing Centre, agreed. 2.8, I think we agree again to, we're wanting to bring back the car parking operations of the number of points that have been raised there. Now, I'm going to ask for your opinion on the next, whether we have 2 items yet to go. We just press on with them. There is lunch. I don't want anybody passing out before we manage to get to lunch. So, okay. Item 11. Item 11 is the Armed Forces Champion Annual Report from the Director of Communities. I welcome the annual report from the Council's Armed Forces Champion, Archie Dryborough. Archie, do you wish to present your report?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to take as long as the last report did, but basically I cannot do this job without the support of council officers, elected members, officers of the council right through the structure, and those third charity organisations that do help our veterans and those with medical and mental health issues. I'm happy to put the report forward, Chair, and agree with the recommendations.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dryborough, and I'm sure all members are very grateful for the hard work that you continue to put in a new role, and you're actually a sterling example, I think, to other councils as to how the role can be taken forward. Councillor Carruthers?
Thanks, Leader. I think as leader of the Conservative group, I'd like to commend Archie and his work, his hard work. I was with him last night in regards to some of his undertakings yesterday with his Armed Forces Day. Archie and I disagree on a lot of things, but there's one thing I would definitely commend Archie on. He does a phenomenal, fantastic job when it comes to his Armed Force Champion. The whole group thinks that, think very high level when it comes to that. We'd only commend him. Leader.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks. Again, I'd like to commend Archie and all the work he does with the team that surrounds him. I'm just also really pleased that at the recent awards night at Marshalton High School, their new Army Cadet Force was to the fore, and we'll be going into the new campus as well. So again, I'm sure Archie will be visiting that in the very near future.
Thanks. Councillor Maitland?
Well, Leader, speaking woman to woman, I imagine that you, probably like I, secretly rather enjoyed the picture on page 233 of a man making a monster fuss about something that most of us just get on with and take in our stride. But speaking seriously, Leader, yes, absolutely fine. I join my colleagues in saying this is a celebration of the role played by our armed forces. Extremely important that men and women are recognised that for their contribution to the defence of the realm. I am delighted to see that the Council is pursuing the Gold Award. I think it should. I think it's external validation of what is done corporately. And so I commend the report, and as Captain Mannering would say, carry on, carry on.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, if we move to the recommendations, with many thanks to Archie, we've considered the activities and we note the increase in armed forces events, some of which are taking place this week and some of which will take the Victoria Cross ones and so on will be taking place through the rest of the year. So thanks very much for that, Archie. And finally, I'll try not to take too long on this one either. We have a notice of motion on the Apprenticeship Charter. Members have been asked to consider the terms of the notice of motion I proposed and which will be seconded by Deputy Leader Councillor Robin Davidson. As members are aware, the trade union Unison represents many of the Council's employees and, like the Council, recognises the importance of good quality apprenticeships. The Apprenticeship Charter outlines what apprentices have a right to expect when they undertake an apprenticeship and the responsibilities of employers. I'm sure we would all hope that the Council already fulfils these obligations and responsibilities. However, by setting out these in a motion to Council, we make it clear to our apprentices what they can expect from us as an employer. The report states that our Modern Apprenticeship Plus scheme does align with these commitments and indicates the success of our apprenticeship schemes in the past in achieving positive destinations for apprentices of 91%, the majority in employment with the Council itself, some with other employers, and some going on into further education. Given that the Council already fulfils these commitments, you may wonder why this motion is being presented today. In bringing it before you, we want to highlight the good practice that other employees should consider following. We also want to affirm the importance we attach to the apprenticeship pathway as a pathway into training and employment. Much has been said over the years about the parity of esteem for academic and vocational education, but all too often academic achievement and higher education are perceived to be superior. However, a good quality apprenticeship can often be a better route into work and a better career path than some other routes into employment, and that needs to be recognised. This council is very committed to apprenticeships and will work with all partners to bring as many to our region as possible, whether with us or with other employers. By signing up to this charter, we elucidate what apprentices ought to be able to expect when setting out on that road and that career pathway into work. And I propose a motion in my name. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Leader. I have a feeling that I may be rewarded if I am brief, given it's been a very long and warm morning indeed. And indeed, Leader, you've actually said it all. We bring this forward so that it reaffirms practices that we have already implemented. It's a policy statement about things we regard as being important in terms of how we treat our apprentices. And of course, we wish to look ahead in terms of it being incorporated into the development of our approach, the apprenticeship board and opportunities for apprenticeships in the future, as outlined at 3.5. Would very much hope that it's something that would command cross-party support, and I'm very happy to second.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Leader. It's actually just a suggestion, and I think for members' information, it'd be really useful if we could get some form of idea which departments in the council have got modern apprentices, which ones don't, and how many stay on with the council, how many don't. I don't expect that today because this is a policy thing, but it might be a piece of information that other members would welcome. I certainly would.
Certainly would be useful information to collate. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a few points on it. I appreciate that this is Unison's apprenticeship charter, but I would have thought a kind of joint charter with all trade unions would have been more appropriate than specifically just the Unison one. My second point is actually an inquiry. It's the bullet point 4, and the apprentices have a right to. It's the same terms and conditions and existing workplace policies and procedures. What exactly does that mean? And my last point, that I appreciate and I agree with the vast majority of the rights and our responsibilities, but I would have thought that possibly better what we would expect from the apprentice. In that, if you consider that 198 entered the apprenticeship scheme and only 116 remain, so I would have thought that something in there indicative that we would like some loyalty and expect them to stay with the council as we are guaranteeing them a job, according to this charter.
Well, we're not necessarily guaranteeing them a job with the council. There's the opportunity to get into other work. I think on the issue of what we expect from that would be part of the employment contract of the apprentice. And some apprentices will actually move on to other jobs. I mean, they may be in training and then find a job elsewhere. And I don't think you can prevent people from, taking another job if another job opportunity comes up.
I do appreciate that, Leader, but it's more, we can't really enforce it, but it's more of what we would hope we would gain from them, some loyalty to stay with them. But if you go to the second bullet point that says a job offer once the apprenticeship is completed, which would indicate that we are in fact offering them a job.
Well, in many cases we do offer them a job, but we can also assist people to get into other, to gain employment elsewhere. It is not saying necessarily a job offer with the council, but the council can help people to find jobs in other employees, even from what the information we have about who else is looking for work, looking for employees. And in fact, the apprenticeship with the council is actually well regarded by other employers, I understand. I think you had another point as well you were asking about. It was about why it was. It comes from Unison. Unison's actually asking all local authorities to sign up to this, and it's actually about making a statement about the type of apprenticeships we can have with local authorities throughout the country.
Same point, Chair. It's just that this would have been taken to the Scottish Trade Union Congress, and it would have been agreed by all trade unions that was a process that would go through.
Indeed. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. Yep, I think this is It's a welcomed motion, and I think we do support apprenticeships. Having been at the Douglas Ewart PTA meeting last week, the issue of offering apprenticeships to some of the school leavers and the older children was brought up. Now, under the Charter, it says that apprentices have the right to high quality training both on and off the job. And certainly on the actual report, 3.4 mentions the establishment of an apprenticeship board with wider employability partners such as Skills Development Scotland, the New Enterprise Agency, etc. I'm just wondering whether there's a place on that board for somebody from the school's point of view, because there were concerns raised about sometimes some of the timing of the apprenticeships. So therefore, sometimes, and it has happened, where some of our school children are not perhaps completing their education because there's been an offer of an apprenticeship. And equally, there has at times been training has been required to take those children out of school in order to complete their apprenticeship. And while it's really welcomed, and certainly at the PTA, there was a lot of positives about the apprenticeships being offered to the school children, this issue was highlighted. And it's just something to be mindful of as we move forward with this. But I think it's very much welcomed within Dumfries and Galloway. So thank you for bringing it forward.
I think that's a good point, actually, that, that we need to have the input of schools. Councillor Blake, you want to come back?
Leader, you were quite right. There was another point. It was one that I actually raised, but I didn't have a response to it. It was bullet point 4. The other thing, I appreciate Councillor Driver's comments, that is good, and that's information to add, but it would been helpful if that had been on the body of the report as well.
Okay, I think that would refer to your conditions of employment, your health and safety, all other aspects of ways in which people are employed. The same conditions of employment that other employees of the council would expect to receive.
If we can maybe clarify, for example, if a teacher decides to want to give up teaching and wants to come and be an apprentice joiner, would they transfer over with the same terms and conditions as a teacher? In other words, salary and right to holiday.
Apologies, but my reading of it is about not establishing a separate set of terms and conditions in terms of a policy for the modern apprentices, but making sure they're included within the current policies that the council operates. So it was less about salary and much more about treatment and access to those policies and making sure that that's equal across the different job groups, including modern apprentices.
Just
I can see what the point of the last bullet point, which looks as if you were a teacher, you could become an apprentice on the teacher's pay scale, which I don't think. I think this probably, in terms of what Unison's put forward, is somebody who's on a grade, employed in something, and is then going forward to undertake an apprenticeship as part of their training within their employment, rather than somebody coming from the director deciding they want to become an apprentice joiner or whatever.
Leader, if we could come back on that, I appreciate that's probably the behind it. That's the reason for it. But I think it's not really clear, and I think we have to be specific on that. That it's not for the individual conditions of service, that it's more the workplace.
It's just to be on the same point. Our understanding of it is its terms and conditions with regard to employment rights, etc. What are Unison's understanding? Is it wages as well? Because if I wouldn't like to think that we actually get ourselves into a situation here where we've agreed something, Unison can then come and say, no, under the last bullet point that you've got in your charter, you've agreed that anyone can leave their job, the chief executive can decide that he wants to be an apprentice joiner as well, and he would be entitled to transfer on his current terms and conditions under the same contract, because on your contract you've got how much you're being awarded and what spinal column points you're awarded. So it's just to clarify that we're not putting our interpretation on it against what Unison are interpreting.
Yeah, this is adoption. This is not actually agreeing as policy either. This is adopting the terms of the Charter. So we're not actually saying that's our policy to allow the Chief Executive to retrain as apprentice joiner and receive the salary, which we will find out about when we read an audited accounts. Councillor Driver had, and Councillor Bergson had something to...
Maybe just to help the situation along, whenever you apply for a job, you get a role. Within that role, it tells you your pay grade system and how many points you've actually got within that pay grade system. If you apply with the chief executive being an apprentice, you go to that apprentice role. That role will tell you what the pay grade is. It's not the chief exec's pay that goes there.
Councillor Ferguson?
Well, absolutely, Archie's kind of half answered it there. The bit about the same terms and conditions as existing workplace policies and procedures doesn't cover the salary scale. That's a job evaluation role. So anybody making a career choice to move from chief executive to an apprentice chippy would be doing that at the, I would say, buyer beware.
Final bullet point that the issues arising around. Councillor Carruthers?
I served my time, so I've been through this experience as an apprenticeship. I've employed 3 apprentices, which was quite a fulfilling and satisfying, to say the least. And when you see them coming out and going and creating their careers, so I agree with the principle. This a personal view. I absolutely agree with this. We should be supporting apprentices in this way. We've had a couple of points for the Conservative group in particular that we needed clarified, and I think we've had them clarified. And the stomach's rumbling, Leader.
I'm advised, I have a helpful piece of advice from Rona here. It says that we can support the Charter, but we can also develop our own policy based on the Charter, so we can clarify those sorts of aspects. It doesn't mean something daft. Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. The question I've got is, why is this here at all? We've already got a charter which covers all the points, and it says here in 3.2, the current commitments within Council's recent modern apprenticeship plus scheme align with the 10 commitments set out within the Unison Apprenticeship Charter. So I know you brought it, but why is it here? I mean,
I think I explained why we brought it. Actually, to highlight the importance of apprenticeships, and also because this is something which is nationwide in sense of getting support for good quality apprenticeships. Because although the council offers good quality apprenticeships, not everybody does. And
I'm very supportive of apprenticeships.
Yeah, I know. I'm
Leader, and Unison should maybe be adopting our charter.
Okay, so but are we agreed to? Yep, agreed to support, but also to develop our own policy based on the principles of the Charter. Okay, grand. Okay. Minutes, please sit down, everybody, minutes. I know everybody's hungry, right? Be as fast as possible. Minutes, okay. Right, okay, can we sit down? We'll try and be as quick as possible. Right, okay, minutes of the full price, I move them.
Seconded.
Ad hoc Bridge Educational Trust sub.
I move.
Jeff? Right, okay. Under Area Committee.
Happy to move.
Right. Sipple.
Happy to move.
Can you second, Rob, please?
Happy second.
Licensing panel, no, communities.
Happy to move.
Pleased to second.
Licence panel of 13th of February.
Happy to move.
And have we a seconder?
Happy to second.
Great. And of the 10th of April, can you move it in absence? That Jeff, can you move it in Patsy's?
Happy to move, yeah.
Yeah, and second.
And happy to second.
Right, and licensing panel of the 12th of April, I move that.
Happy to second.
Right. Licensing panel 8th of May, I move that. Can we have a seconder for the licensing panel 8th of May, Graham? Thank you. Local review body.
Happy to move.
And Listed Area Committee.
Happy to second.
Pension Subcommittee.
Happy to move.
Happy to second. Planning's applications.
Happy to second.
Police, Fire and Rescue.
Happy to move.
Right. Social Work Services.
Move.
Pleased to second.
Stewardship Area Committee.
Happy to move.
And pleased to second.
And Wigton Area Committee.
Happy to second.
Thanks very much. And no more urgent business, so I thank members for their attendance, wish everybody a safe journey home and enjoy the rest of the sunshine, and do have a relaxing recess when it comes, because we've all worked hard this year.